жито, по ходах вистраждано все. Я знаю, інші гордовито прапороносець понесе. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє у нез'ясованій журбі. Всю кров мою зі скитання воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою зі скитання воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лафтем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні. У нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на ордів образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 198, and long live the Queen.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, but before we go there, I of course have to let everyone know, just in case you've not heard the news today, that Queen Elizabeth II, aged 96 years old and reigning monarch of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland for 70 years, has passed away today at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. She has immediately been succeeded by King Charles III, who will now succeed her position on the throne and reign for the rest of that time. Hopefully, things will be looking forward for Britain in the future, and of course, our condolences extend to all Commonwealth nations, the United Kingdom, and the royal family during this difficult time. We will, of course, be trying to cover this news in the future, and of course, it is a historic occasion, as most everyone on this stream was most likely born before, well, after the Queen had been coronated as the reigning monarch of the United Kingdom. It's an unfortunate thing, and of course, it is a history. We've actually seen history occur just today. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our news segment for the night. And while the news of the Queen being dead is of course unfortunate, we have heard unbelievable news from Ukraine as the Ukrainians have blown through 48 miles of Russian ground in the past 48 hours, reaching the Oskil River Reservoir and cutting the Russian army in two. This comes as a bombshell today because yesterday we were not reporting at all much on where the Ukrainians were, but I could tell y'all that yesterday we knew behind the scenes that the Ukrainians had already crossed over the M03 and seemed to be well on their way towards the Oskil River Reservoir. But I couldn't say that on stream, but today the Ukrainian armed forces have come out and clearly stated how far they've advanced, and they've made it all the way to Kupiansk and all the way down to Bakhtin. And so, let's cover the sequence of events of how everything went down today, and let's see what is in the future, because I can tell y'all, it's not getting better for the Russians at all at this point. And so, starting off, we can see that the besieged city of Balakliya today was assaulted by Ukrainian forces, since this pocket, while holding a decent amount of Russian forces, was tying up a decent amount of Ukrainian armed forces as well, as they had to contain the Russians within this pocket. And so we could see that street fighting began to occur within Balakliya today. As far as we were able to see and report, no Ukrainian artillery was used within the city itself, and the Ukrainians used only small arms fire to clear the buildings of the remaining Russian forces. We now see the Ukrainians stacked up on the building still and firing around the corner. We hear one Ukrainian placing some well-aimed shots. Also notice how the soldier up front is shouldering his rifle, unlike the Russians who would have not done the same. We can hear what sounds to be the squeaking of a brake. We see the Ukrainians are still stacked up on the side of this building. And that may actually be an air raid siren going off in the background. While this video ended and we didn't see the Ukrainians advancing on film, one thing that we were able to confirm today is that Ukrainian flags were seen in the city center because the Ukrainians wiped the Russians out of the town. And so here is a video of the Ukrainians on a rooftop. Actually, no, sorry, that's a different video. I'm getting a little too hyped up. I'm forgetting which sequence the videos are in. These are Ukrainian BMPs and Ukrainian soldiers in the center of Balakliya city as they roll on through to rejoin the rest of the offensive as they race towards the Oskil Reservoir. Is that beautiful or what? Liberation has come to this area of Ukraine, and it couldn't be any sooner and it couldn't be any faster as of today. With that, we're now going to be moving on to our next video, where we could also see that the Kraken unit raised the flag of Ukraine on top of the city council building and took down the Russian flag. Here's that video as this soldier gives a speech to the public. Of course, we are using this video under the premise of fair use for news reporting, as of course this is newsworthy, as you can tell.
Пане президент, пане головнокомандуючий, місто Балакliya, Харківської області, взяти під контроль. Наказ виконано. Російські окупаційні війська відійшли. Спецпідрозділ Головного управління розвідки Кракен. Сьогодні, 8 вересня, 16:00. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And with that, that's the end of the video, and the blue and the yellow fly over Balakliya again, and not only the town of Balakliya, but the rest of the entire area. I'm sorry if I'm busting out y'all's eardrums right now, but y'all will see why I'm so excited in a second once I break down the figures and how fast they've advanced over these past 2 days. But with that, we're going to continue to cover the Balakliya news before I get ahead of myself, where we can see another video from a different perspective showing... Cancel. No, we don't want that. Showing that building where the Kraken unit was from a distance and the flag being raised over it. You can hardly see it, but it's that tiny little white speck above that building. With that, that is the end of the video, and that is also the end of all the news from inside Balakliya today, a liberated city and one of the largest that the Ukrainians have liberated in the course of this war so far. Balakliya, pre-war, had a population of 30,000 people, and so in terms of towns that the Ukrainians have been able to recapture, I believe it is the largest at this point, and it is a good sign as this is progress. With that, we're now going to be moving to the outskirts of the town, where we've been able to see a couple of other interesting things. We can see that the Ukrainians continue to roll on. As far as we were able to tell, these were the Ukrainian forces rolling out the other end of Balakliya and to rejoin the rest of the offensive. Also, we're going to have to mute that. But when you see Ukrainian forces stacked on top of their BTRs as they continue to race down the road to join the rest of the offensive and push the Russians out of this area of Ukraine. Just look at them go. We now see them driving by liberated villagers as they wave Ukrainian flags and cheer the soldiers on. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next video, where we can see that the Russians in Balakliya... Now, Matthew, this is a typical Russian move. The Russians said, "Oh, bleed, Ivan, we're surrounded, run!" And they tried to cross the Separatists River and ended up drowning amphibious tanks. I don't know how they did it. They literally did it. They drowned BMPs, which can float. So here's the video of that.
Трофеї тікали, потопили.
We hear some artillery in the distance, and we see that the Ukrainians have captured probably... they probably require a little bit of repair, of course, because they're submerged in water. But they've
maybe
captured,
just a little bit.
Maybe just a little, but take a look at this. A BMP-1 and a BMP-2. In case y'all don't know, just like an M113, these things float. However, they don't float if you keep the rear doors open, and apparently the Russians that were driving and commanding these vehicles were so freaked out, they left the rear doors of the BMP open and just drived it into the river and drowned the thing. And I know someone's about to say, well, I mean, they did that when they bailed out. Nope, that's not true. There's hatches on the top of that BMP that they could have hopped out of. And so those doors were open when they drove into the river, and they flooded the engine and the crew compartment and had to bail out. So with that, that's the end of that video, and it's insane to see that the Russians freaked out like that. Not only did that happen, it looked like Ivan was about to get a couple of letters from some school kids. If y'all were kids in school in the United States, you may have remembered back when the war in Afghanistan was going on, that teachers would allow you to write letters to the soldiers out there in Afghanistan, and those would eventually be sent to soldiers overseas. You know, you could draw with crayons on them and all that stuff. The Russians apparently did the same thing. However, the guy bringing the letters to the front didn't get the memoir that the Russians had been overrun and were retreating at full speed back towards Russia, and so he drove right into the Ukrainians, which captured him and the truck and the letters. Here's the video of them at the letter truck. You can see that they also mailed the letters in like some kind of dingy old, that's not even a Lada. This is like some kind of off-brand Lada, which is really off-brand at that point. You see them flipping through the letters. Also, nice little ladybug. I gotta say, whatever Russian kid drew that up, pretty good job of the ladybug.
Привет из Калининграда, Наташа и Аленка, спасибо вам. Наташа и Аленка не дождутся своего. Уже да. Уже все, а что дальше?
You see them flipping through more of the letters.
Идешь ты смело в этот бой, освобождать Донбасс. Всегда мы мысленно с тобой, ведь защищаешь нас. Нацисты русским не страшны. Умеем побеждать. Защитников родной страны с победой будем ждать. И пишет: вперед, отважный наш солдат, тебя храбрее нет. Я поддержать хочу ребят, как девушка, поэт. Июнь 22 года.
You see the Ukrainian reading off all the letters.
Алена и Наташа из Калининграда. Ваши ребятки, скорее всего, за Россию не сыграют больше. Отыгрались. Что делать?
And with that, that's the end of the video. And I think that it's wonderful that Russian school children have been encouraged to write to the soldiers of Ukraine and let them know to keep on going. The Russians, as a sign of goodwill, actually didn't write these letters for the Russians. They actually had them written for the Ukrainians and transported these into Ukrainian hands so that way they could get some words of encouragement to let them know the counteroffensive is great and keep it up. With that, that's the end of that little bit of Balakliya news. And with that, let's move beyond that town, and let me say something real quick to let y'all get an idea of how fast this counterattack is going. And once again, I do want to say this. While we have somewhat accurate front lines here, these are not 100% accurate. As far as we know, the Ukrainian armed forces have already moved beyond the perimeter, the parameters of this front line as we have it right now. And they've even begun to encircle some other cities, although we won't say which ones those are. And we're also not going to give away the exact location of where Ukrainian forces are. However, this front line, this area, is something that we were able to confirm through official sources that had been captured today. So, with that in mind, let me tell y'all how fast the Ukrainians have been moving. Before this offensive began, we knew, although my map didn't show it, the other map showed, that the Ukrainians were on the other side of Balakliya by about a mile or two, somewhere around the Krinichne area. And so if we measure in a straight line from Kriniche all the way to the Onskil River Reservoir, we can see that over 2 days, the Ukrainians have advanced 40 miles. That is 20 miles a day, which in military terms is an unbelievable breakneck speed. They might as well not be running into any Russians during this entire offensive. They are practically moving forward unopposed at this point. This is a massive breakthrough. The Russians probably don't even have any organized forces in this area to resist the Ukrainian advance, and this is something the likes of which has never been seen in this war on either side. We've never seen the Russians, after the onset of the war in the first month, conduct any kind of breakthrough offensives at this speed, covering this amount of ground. And we've never seen the Ukrainians conduct one like this either. This, in fact, is going far better, from what we know, than the Kherson counterattack, which, while doing incredibly good, it pales in comparison to 20 miles a day like we've seen over the past 2 days. The Ukrainians have literally turned into a steamroller in this area, and it looks like the Russians are absolutely defenseless in stopping this fast-moving, steamrolling vehicle. And so with that, we're now going to be moving to the area of Shevchenkov, where we saw that Russian soldiers were ambushed here and their equipment was left behind. Here's the video. When you see the equipment left behind. And actually, we can see some other stuff that I didn't notice earlier, so we're going to cut that video short, but suffice it to say, it looks like the Russians are pretty much not opposing the Ukrainians, and they might be on full retreat back out of this area. And we can also see that a decent amount of Russians there were apparently knocked out as well. But we can't see that on YouTube. They're taking a nap. With that, we're now moving on into the next bit of news from the Balakliya area, where we can see the Ukrainians rolling through another village, and the Ukrainians in this village are cheering them on. This isn't any of that typical Russian stuff where they pull them out of a basement and they just stand around awkwardly and not say anything. These people are ecstatic. They are elated to see that Ukrainian forces are rolling through their town. We can see them cheering and waving there as the BTR continues to roll through. You see them continuing to move forward, and everyone on every single side of the street is waving and cheering these soldiers forward. Look at these guys up here. They are into it. They are ecstatic. Freedom has finally come to this area of the country after 4 to 5 months of Russian occupation, and not any sooner. And you can tell that everyone here is truly happy to know that the Ukrainian army is here and that they are now back in Ukrainian territory. And just look at that. That's what this war has been fought for since the start. It's been fought to defend these Ukrainians who want to be Ukrainian. And you can see that when these towns are liberated and when the Ukrainians roll back through, these people truly show that they want to be Ukrainian, and they are happy to know that they'll be able to fly the blue and yellow banner again over their hometown. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news from the Balakliya area, where we saw a Russian ammunition truck exploding as the Ukrainians continued to move forward. And so with that, here's the video, and this one was taken at night, so it must have been during the nighttime operations of this special counterattack operation, which appears to be going a lot better than Russia's special military operation. We see both of the Ukrainians are relishing in the moment as they're filming the ammunition explosion.
Таке на сході, бачиш? Ну, блядь, повоював.
Is that a Russian?
Брату, слава Україні.
That's a Russian! They blew up his ammunition truck, and then they're sitting over here while it's blowing up, filming it, and then they turn around to the guy and go, Slava Ukraini. Oh man, they're rubbing it in this guy's face that the Russians are done for. And this guy looks like he kind of knows it at this point.
І не одна на.
Whoa.
Let's go back and listen to that again. I was going to ignore it until you said something about it.
That was like the best sound effect I've heard yet from one of these videos.
Yeah, I love it. And also I gotta say this video is pretty funny because they literally got the drop on the Russians, apparently made the guy surrender, and then blew up the ammunition truck in front of him, and then just turned around and said, Slava Ukraini. Oh man.
Скажете для преси? Бля, осколки.
Well, you see the Russian right there. So he's sitting there like, oh man. And that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that Ukrainian forces are rolling forward with lightning fast speed. With that, we're now on to the next bit of news from the Balakliya area, where we can see another video of a village being liberated and the townspeople cheering on the Ukrainian armed forces, and in fact, hugging the soldiers and crying with ecstatic joy that their town is finally liberated from the Russians. With that, here's the video.
Все добре, все добре.
Молодці! Ви коліну пели в подвал сьогодні.
Дякую вам, дякую.
Молилися, щоб ви до нас курсилися. Сильно було. Діти, мами, внуки мої. Я так нікуди, що ви до нас прийшли.
Ви на всяк випадок все посидіть, будь ласка, в підвалі, будь ласка, тому що може бути ще обстріли. Но ми вже тут, вже все добренько.
Спасибо, мальчики.
Ні, там вже все.
На салаті осталися. Будете?
Трішечки пізніше.
That's the end of the video, but
Goodness.
it's wonderful to see that the Ukrainians are actually welcome back. We've seen so many propaganda videos from the Russians trying to show that a villager here or a Ukrainian citizen there says that they're happy that the Russians are here. But these people's reaction, unlike Russian propaganda videos, is raw. This isn't anything that looks like it was made up or acted out. These people have completely lost their composure due to the absolute joy of knowing that they're free again from the Russian tyranny and oppression that has reigned over Ukraine for the past 5 months in this area. And it's great to see that the Ukrainian soldiers are going to continue. And they're not going to hang around these people for long. That's probably the best thing about this, and I know that sounds like a weird statement. These soldiers are going to continue further on down the road and liberate the next village where there will be another group of people like this, and then the next one where there will be another group of people like this, until they make it all the way to the Russian border. And so with that, it's a beautiful video to see, and we're going to move on to the next one because this is only one of many that we've seen today. And so with that, we are on to the next video where we saw that on a radio tower in Ukraine, in the Kharkiv region that's been controlled for the Russians for some time, a Ukrainian climbed the mast of the radio tower and flung the Russian flag down to the ground, a symbolic gesture showing that the Russians are practically defeated in the entirety of the Kharkiv Oblast. Here's the video. We see the Ukrainian man, having climbed to the top of the tower, lift the Russian flag up. He's trying his hardest to pull it out, and he's finally tipped it over, and he's thrown it to the ground. The Russian flag then plummets to the floor. And the drone camera pans back up to the Ukrainian colors hoisted on top of the radio tower, and this area is once again Ukraine's. Is that impressive or what? No more Russian tricolor over this land. It will now be the Ukrainian blue and yellow until the very end of this war. With that is the end of that video. An impressive and wonderful video showing us the progress that the Ukrainians have made today, liberating massive swaths of Ukrainian ground. And with that, we're going to be moving on into our last video from this area, which shows us something that I think the Russians are going to be a little bit scared about. Now, I showed this video. It shows Ukrainians, and it does say where they're heading, but it doesn't give the exact location they're in. And at this point, I think it's kind of clear to the Russians that Izyum is now going to be an unattainable position. And let me explain why for a second. And most likely, why the Russians will either be encircled in Izyum and destroyed there in their entirety, or they're going to have to try and conduct a hasty retreat out of the area and across the Oskil Reservoir. Izyum no longer has a major road that connects it to a Russian logistics route. The M03, both north and south, has been cut off by the Ukrainians. There's nothing west that will supply Izyum, and there's nothing east either, because as far as we know, the Ukrainians have captured the town of Hurakvata, which means that the bridge crossing here on the P-79 has also been cut off as well. And so these Russians, for all intents and purposes, only have one road through Oskil to retreat through or to try and get supplies from. And knowing the force size of the Russians in this area, there is no way that all of those forces could be supplied off of that single road without major traffic jams occurring and supply delays, which will lead to those units practically being ineffective and just sitting ducks. Knowing this, the Russians are screwed in Izyum. Based off of my estimations, I'll assume that at the best case scenario for Russia, they'll most likely hold on to Izyum for about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And at worst case scenario, or as we'll say, the best case scenario for the Ukrainians, the Russians will most likely retreat out of Izyum or be defeated in Izyum by the end of this week. And so here's the video of Ukrainian forces driving towards Izyum from the north. We can see here BTR-4s passing some Ukrainian T-72s on their way to Izyum. Would you look at that? And I'd also like to note one more thing. You can tell that the Ukrainians have gone on the offensive because now they have an identifying marker on their vehicles. Up until this point in the war, we've never seen the Ukrainians use any kind of markings on their vehicle rather than like a large yellow block or something like that to show that they're Ukrainian. But now that they're on the offensive, they've had to come up with an identifying marker, and I think it's an incredibly good one, the cross. And so with that, when you see this BTR-4 drive past another tank as the crew waves them on forward, and everyone is wishing them the best of luck as they're about to go forward and wipe out Izyum. And so with that, that's the end of this video. And to analyze what's going on this front line today, we have witnessed an entire Russian collapse. Never before in this field of war, over the course of 6.5 months, have we seen anything this catastrophic to Russian armed forces yet. The Russians have lost a massive amount of forces, which we'll be going over here in a second once we get to the location unknowns. And not only that, they've lost a massive swath of land, spanning some 40 miles long and some 30 miles wide. It is the biggest area of land that the Russians have lost ever since the beginning of the war and their retreat from the northern areas of command that the Russians had in the first month and a half of the war. This, by far, is a game changer. And this is something that the Russians will be able to lie about for now, but there's no way for the Russians to really regroup at this point. As far as we know, the Russian forces have probably been pushed north beyond Kupiansk and are in a complete rout. They provided no resistance as far as we could tell to Ukrainian forces today, as covering 20 miles is about the speed that the US Army moved through the open deserts of Iraq. Just to give you all a context of speed. And so, considering that the U.S. Army, when it moved through the open, empty deserts of Iraq, largely was unopposed in their advance and was covering 20 miles a day, you can get an idea that the Russian lines have collapsed in this area, and the Ukrainians may as well just be driving through open countryside and throwing up a flag here and there, liberating a village or a town or a city. With this in mind, the Russians here are in a very bad situation, and Izyum will most likely be lost within the next week or 2 weeks. And so with that, that is the end of this impressive news segment for today. Probably the biggest news that we've ever gotten in the entirety of this war. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news, which will include the location unknowns, the northern Kharkiv news, and also the news from the Donbass, which we've only gotten 3 of them, and they're all around Bakhmut. But before we get to all of that news, we're going to take a quick pause to address our polls and to also address 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, we're entering our first question segment of the night, and we're going to kick it off with a big ol' yeehaw! And that was a super loud one. That really got my vocal cords going there for a good minute. But up first, we do have one poll to address, and the question was, why did the Russian cross the river? And yes, it is a joke. The options were to steal a toilet, which was the most popular. 47% of you said steal a toilet, which I completely agree with that option. 28% said to attract Ukrainian artillery fire. They're doing a pretty good job of that as well. 17% said to make a TikTok video. They're also doing some of that. And only 8% said to have a wash. And they probably need one of those too.
They probably need all of the above, but I will agree. If they were doing anything, it was most likely to steal a toilet or a washing machine. And so with that, I hope we've addressed that poll fairly well, and I hope y'all had fun with that one too, because I didn't see it, but that one actually sounded like a pretty funny one. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and that is our only poll for the moment. So, you know what that means. We're moving right into our super chat questions. And up first, while my spreadsheet freezes up on me, come on. There we go. Up first, we have a very generous $300 super chat from none other than BC Skyman, who says, you guys deserve some more coffee money for such good news today. Slava Ukraine, Roy and his men are a major part of the offensive near Izyum. And before the enforcer answers that question, BC, thank you very much for that very generous support. And I did get your message today, and I've informed enforcer to look for your email.
And also, BC Skyman, I thank you for the massive support you've given us today. That kind of support helps us to keep covering this news of the war in Ukraine every single day, and is also helping us to look forward into the future. Also, by the way, everyone, I know that this, now I'm going to take an aside real quick, BC Skyman, if you're okay with it, but I don't know if y'all know this, but when we reach 100,000 subscribers, I'm committed to doing a face reveal. I have an idea of what we're going to do, but just letting y'all know, because the faster we reach 100,000 subscribers, which we're only about 2.5 thousand away now, the closer we get to a face reveal. And so with that, moving back to BC Skyman's question, that is enough coffee money to keep us caffeinated for quite a long time, probably weeks on end if we were to drink a cup of coffee every time we ran out. But I thank you so much for the incredible support. You've been around forever, BC Skyman, helping us to keep this channel running, helping us to keep covering this news. And I know that you and your wife and your family are heavily tied to Ukraine and have been heavily involved in this news. And I've got to thank you so much for your support to this channel. And I gotta say, today's news, if anything, is worth celebrating. And I will check out that email here in a bit. I wasn't able to check it out before stream because there was a lot going on, trying to get the stream running and stuff. But I will check it out after stream and make sure to take a good look at it. And with that, I thank you so much for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman. You have been an old guard Lee Spring Army soldier since the very beginning. And I thank you so much for the support and helping the Lee Spring Army to keep on marching forward. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a very generous $60 super chat from My Lit, who does not leave a comment, but my. Wow, thank you very much for the very generous support, and thank you for watching the channel and helping to keep us running, as always. But Enforcer, would you like to add anything to my comments?
I would like to thank you so much, Mall Lit, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And of course, I can see that you threw that in British pounds, and of course, you all have had a massive bit of unfortunate news today. And of course, it is quite unfortunate. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, so that way we can continue to cover the news of the war in Ukraine and focus on the future. And I've got to say, as of today, the future is looking pretty freaking bright. I don't know about y'all, but I'm hyped. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again, Mullet.
And also, folks, to answer your question, if the Enforcer does a face reveal, I'm also going to do a face reveal myself.
Really?
So the quicker we get to 100K, you're going to get to see both of our beautiful faces. I know everybody's been waiting for that. So anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $50 donation from Gary Robbins, who says, which was planned real counter-offensive in Kherson, in Kharkiv, or both? Is there a third front ready to erupt?
To honestly answer your question, also thank you for the huge support. That does help us out a lot. But to answer the question, I actually think that the Kherson counteroffensive and its goals are true. It's not a feint whatsoever, because once we get there today, you'll see that the force size that the Ukrainians have in that area is no joke. It's not on paper figures. It's literal physical numbers that we're able to confirm on film today. That is not a feint whatsoever, and I do believe that their goal is to retake Kherson soon, because their destruction of every single river crossing that the Russians have shows that they're serious, and also the amount of resources and time and attention that they've put into making this one effective also shows that as well. However, I think that as soon as the Ukrainians saw... Well, let me explain this real quick, because this is about to be half-baked if I don't say this at the start. I think that all of these counteroffensives we're seeing right now had been planned for a while, and it's just that they heavily publicized the Kherson one, because they were totally fine knowing that the Russians would be cut off and they wouldn't have any supplies anyways, with leading the Russians into thinking this would be the only one, and that is what would be happening. That would make a lot of sense to me. Because even though the Russians could throw a whole lot of resources and manpower into that area, once the bridge crossings are destroyed, it's all pointless, because their supplies will dry up and the Ukrainians will just start shooting fish in a barrel pretty much down there in that area. However, in the Kharkiv area, and well, really both of the Kharkiv areas, Balakliya and Kharkiv itself, I think that they waited to conduct those counterattacks until they saw that the Russians had gone all in resource-wise trying to defend Kherson. Then they destroyed the ferry crossing, and then right after that, literally within hours of that ferry crossing being destroyed, it seemed as though the counterattacks in the Balakliya and Kharkiv area began. It's honestly impressive strategy. The way the Ukrainians have pulled this off has been incredibly thoughtful, well planned out, and either they're getting help from an outside country, wink wink, nudge nudge, we all know who that is, or they have some impressive generals that have untold levels of deep thought, thinking, and strategy, because right now they're making the Russians look like fools. So with that, to try and summarize this answer, All of these counterattacks were most likely planned at the same time. They, of course, made sure that the Russians spent all of their time and effort trying to counter the Kherson one. That's not a feint, and it's probably very serious in its goals and intentions. And once they saw that the Russians had gone all in down there, they decided to exploit the other planned counterattacks that they had and just start blowing through the Russian lines near Balakliya and also start pushing the Russians out of the northern Kharkiv area as well. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you for helping the Lee Spring Army to keep marching on and to keep covering this news. And so with that, I gotta thank you so much for everyone's support. It helps us out a lot, and I hope you all have enjoyed the answers that we've given to y'all's questions. Once again, I've got to say, I don't know everything, and while I give these answers with a fair amount of confidence, considering that at the beginning of the war, I'll say this, at the beginning of the war, I used to go, now I may be right or wrong a lot more than I do now, but considering that I've gone through 198 days of this war every single day, and we're nearing day 200, and I've hardly ever been wrong on what the Russians and the Ukrainians are doing, at this point, I'm fairly confident in my guesstimations and assumptions that I usually base off of a historical precedent. However, although I'm confident, that doesn't mean it's always right. So make sure to take it with a grain of salt. While I'm telling you something, it may not turn out that way, and it may not be true. Also, I want to say this. I know I never said it on stream, but I think you may have noticed this, Matthew. Whenever I was talking about the Ukrainians are preparing a counteroffensive and I go through the Kharkiv area, I would always sit there and go, but in this area, and then I'd stop myself and go, we're not covering that. That's because every single time I went through this area, I would always note, the Ukrainians seem to not be doing anything here. And it seems like there's no Russian forces here either, as far as we could tell. And I was always noticing, wow, this would be the easiest place to blow through the Russian lines in this area because it seems like no one would expect it. So, unfortunately, I didn't say it on stream. I hope that someone can go back and prove me right with what I'm saying here and find the timestamps, which, you know, you got hundreds of hours of content to look through, so good luck with that. But I hope that some of y'all can find the timestamps where I'd sit there and go, in this area, and then I go, oh, no, we're not saying that, because I promise y'all, this area right here has been the one I'm looking at, and I never wanted to be like an armchair general sitting here saying, you know, if I was a Ukrainian general, I'd do this. And so I didn't say it, but, man, you know, at points like these, I kind of just wish that I had said something about it, because then I could have sat there and gone, look, you know, I'm right. But then again, that could have given away OPSEC, since it was the Ukrainians' plan the whole time, and then, you know, that wouldn't be great. Anyways, with that, we've reached the end of this question segment, and we're now going to be moving on into the next segment of news, which has some pretty nutty videos in it. Starting off, we saw the rockets' red glare and the bombs bursting midair as the Ukrainians were firing off MLRSs in the night. Here's the video. We see Ukrainian in the dark, and then they said, let there be light. And the Grad begins firing away its unguided rockets. The Grads just continue on firing. And we see the Ukrainians are having fun with it. Wait, was that guy placing a Papa John's order? Yes, I would like a Papa John, please.
I'd like to place an order for more shells.
Yeah. Oh, man. Imagine if the guy is ordering Papa John's. Papa John's is going to be out there inside of the Grad saying, I've eaten 40 pizzas in 30 days. And then he's going to push the lever and you're going to hear the rockets firing. But with that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are continuing on the fire, and we don't know where that video was, but I'm assuming that it was certainly supporting a counterattack. With that, we're on to the next one, where we saw another video from inside of a BTR-4, and this time, it even looks more so like a video game than before. Here's the video. You know what's interesting about this controller, Matthew? It's like a little, like a steering wheel, like he's guiding the turret around like a steering wheel.
I'll be honest, it's kind it's kind of hard to tell like what's going on, to be honest, on my end.
So I'll explain it real quick, just in case if it is hard for you to see. This thing right here that my mouse cursor is circling is the display screen showing him where the gun is looking. It's pretty much the sight. And this thing right here with like the green lit up pad on it that you see kind of swiveling around, that is the controller that he's using to move the gun and also fire it. And it looks like he's having a lot of fun with it.
What he must be saying, like, take this, take that.
Yeah, something like that. And he's giving it to him, like he's giving him everything and the kitchen sink. And we haven't seen the Russians try and steal that yet, but he's definitely giving them the toilet, suffice to say. Or he's taking them out to wash. Jeez, this guy is lighting the place up.
Переключаюсь! Давай резче. Нихуя? Давай резче, резче. Давай. Давай.
Jeez.
Давай лучше.
They are obliterating this area.
Еще левее. Еще левее. Еще левее. Левее. Ти хуя вправо береш, ліво береш. Зараз. А ти хуяриш. Дими! Давай. Да, ёбаный в рот. Это ракеты.
Now see him looking down the sight once more.
Все, погнали.
Looks like he's just taking a good little look around. Now they're firing the coaxial machine gun, it sounds like.
Что за хуйня? Ёбуем нахуй. Це дим. Давай, давай, ну що ти? Що він жде?
With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are using those BTR-4s like they're a video game still. If y'all remember during the Battle of Mariupol, we saw the Azov battalion using BTR-4s like it was a literal video game. They would just race the things around the city at full speed, just firing down roads and stuff. And they did a very good job doing that. It looks like the Russians never expected the Azov to be so ballsy during that battle. And when you see that they're still pretty much using them like that to this day, and apparently evaporating. Say what?
Enforcer, I'm hearing people say that this is a trailer for a new video game.
I would doubt that.
I'm just joking.
Oh, I was like, I doubt that, because why in the world would
you
this
almost bought it for a second. You thought about it.
I was sitting there. I was like, it can't be. I was like, this doesn't look like a video game. But with that, and also Matthew getting one over on me, that's the end of this video, and it's great to see the Ukrainians still using the BTR-4s. With that, we're now on to the next one, where we saw that a Russian base was set alight by a good, accurate HIMARS strike. Here's the video.
And of course we heard a Russian distorted robot man again.
We see him walking through the blaze and the destroyed vehicles and equipment. The HIMARS is once again the culprit of this attack. Destroyed supply trucks all over the place. Destroyed buildings.
Мы точно от него отсюда выбегали, туда выше, да, мы были втроем. Не, пацаны гражданки были. А, не знаю. Они в рассыпную. А, да? Да, буквально где-то за 2 часа. А, да? До этого. Значит, пидорасы надо. Может, где-то надо глянуть маячок. Вот это, я вот это не разбираюсь.
Continue to walk around and show off the area and the destruction that has been caused. I love how the Russians almost give the Ukrainians the information they're looking for, like how accurate the strike was, what it damaged. The Russians just do that for them. They're like, oh, you want a survey team to assess the damage? Here, let me show you. Like, it's almost like they're filming the video for an insurance collector, you know, and be like, here's the damages we suffered, we need the money. Or, you know, as this guy would say, here's the damages we suffered, we need money, you know, because he's in the robot voice. But, man, It's good to see that the HIMARS has taken out another Russian base. With that, that's the end of the video, and we're now moving on into the next one, where we can see that the Ukrainians have been able to get back some of their prisoners of war from the Russians, and you can tell that it appears that some of them were malnourished in captivity and may have been starving. Here's the video, and also notice that while they may have been famished and starving, they still have the compassion to share the food they've been given with each other. When you see the Ukrainian soldiers being brought back, and when you see candies being given out to them, and look at this guy and his kindness. Even knowing that he is as starving as the rest of them, he hands out his snacks and shares it with the rest of them. You got to say, also, notice this. This is probably the best sign that he is malnourished. Notice how bony and shallow his hand looks. There's almost no meat on it. And
it really is.
And that shows you how poorly the Russians have been taking care of these guys. Now, one thing that I will say with certainty is that Ukrainians and Russians usually make a pretty decent surplus of food. There is absolutely no reason that a Ukrainian prisoner of war should be starved to this condition unless if it was done deliberately. The Russians have a decent amount of food to get around, and as far as I've been able to hear, the grain shortages we saw at the beginning of this war have been circumvented due to the Russians stealing a decent amount of Ukrainian grain, and also the harvest season coming around and kind of alleviating a decent amount of that, I guess I could say, strain on the Russian population. So this is really sickening to see that the Russians treated Ukrainian prisoners like this, but it's still amazing to see that Ukrainian prisoners that have suffered this much still have the humanity to share the food and treats with each other and make sure to take care of each other even when they themselves are in a terrible situation. It shows you the kind of compassion and kindness that Ukrainians have on average, and it's just great to see that these guys were able to make it back, although a little worse for wear than when they set off. But with that, that's the end of the video, and a very interesting one at that. And with that, we're going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown News, where we can see the Ukrainians operating an American Humvee and a Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun. I've shot one of these things, and they are impressive. I'm a big fan of them. I think they're a great machine gun. I haven't really shot a lot of other machine guns, though, to get, I guess you could say, a good comparison. But I would have to say this is a great machine gun. We see the Ukrainian getting back up into the turret of the Humvee and bringing up the ammo belt with him. When you see him try and throw it into the ammo box, and it looks like he starts fiddling around with the rounds for a second, and when you tell that he's kind of getting frustrated now, and he's just trying to get the stupid things into the machine gun. He's finally got him in there. He cycles it a little bit to make sure that there's a round in there. Adjusts a couple of things with the turret down below. Actually, he's turning it. And now he's laying down that fire. You now see him fiddling with the M2 a little bit more. He's flipping open the cover once again, and he's now refeeding the rounds. Apparently, there was a feeding issue. We now see he's getting pretty pissed with the ammo belt. And now he's trying to get it into the actual box. Now he's gotten it into the box. He's putting the rounds back in. And now he's firing it again. And oh man, look at that thing go. John
It's a machine gun. Okay.
Okay. Now it looks like he's fired off all of the ammunition, and he's now getting ready to load the M2 again and begin firing it once more. John Moses Browning was a legend, and he designed a lot of incredible firearms during his time as a weapons designer, and I'd have to say that the M2 Browning is probably the one that stood the test of time the best. It's been around forever. It's been around for the United States in World War II and all the way up till today. And I think that with the service record it has and how impressive of a gun it is, John Moses Browning's fantastic little creation will continue to help out the Ukrainians in their counterattacks and continue to help out the U.S. Armed Forces until probably the end of time. And so with that, we're We're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see Russian incendiaries landing on Ukrainian positions at night. Once again, this is a very weird video. Very odd footage. You rarely ever see anything like this, but here's the video, as it looks like deadly tinsel falling from the sky. It's just bizarre to think that each one of these little burning cinders can burn clean through a person. That's the weirdest thing about it, because it looks pretty. So, you know, and I would lie to say it looks deadly. It looks pretty. It looks cool. But to think that that this is a war crime, pretty much, to use it in this way, and to be trying to kill soldiers and burn them alive with this stuff, adds a whole new layer to it. It's deceptively pretty, but also almost instantly deadly. And we can also see this Ukrainian is hiding under a bridge.
Фосфором хуйнули, ебать, блядь. С Новым годом, блядь. И с новым счастьем. Я не знаю, блядь. Щось мені кажеться, що ми сьогодні не постріляємо, я ж кажу. Я тобі кажу, щось моя душа зразу.
That's kind of weird it keeps burning that long on the ground.
Yeah, it is. This side seems to have died out a pretty good bit, but the other side's still burning just fine.
Is it white phosphorus?
I believe this is white phosphorus. White phosphorus burns for an incredibly long time, and it'll burn through anything. If you don't know this, Matthew, this is actually the sickest part of white phosphorus, is that it doesn't stop burning even underwater, and will burn you all the way down to your bone. It will burn through your flesh until it gets to your bone, and even start burning through it too.
Now that's really heinous.
It is, and that's why it's been classified as a war crime to use, unless there's a lot of caveats around white phosphorus. You can use it on enemy personnel and enemy combatants. However, you have to prove that those people were killed in the explosion instead of the subsequent burning of the white phosphorus. That's why whenever you see Russians using it in this manner, where the white phosphorus explodes above the infantry and then rains down onto them as droplets, that is always a war crime, because the intent is to burn the soldiers alive and not kill them in the sudden explosion of it in direct contact with the ground or above them. So with that, I hope that explains for a second what y'all are looking at. And what's the other crazy thing is that if this camera angle was flipped upside down, Matthew, this almost looks like the night sky filled with stars now.
Yeah, it really does.
It's such a pretty thing, but it's also such a deadly thing. It's deceptively deadly compared to how it looks. With that, that's the end of the video, and we're going to be moving on into our final bit of well, actually, we have one more video before we get to the next one. Y'all may notice, and Matthew may be able to read this, I'm not going to read this aloud, but that's an interesting caption. And we're going to play the video, because there's no explanation for it. Y'all will see where I got that title for this video. And now Reddit wants to take a second to load. This is an American volunteer, and his words are pretty understandable to, I think, almost all of our viewers on this channel. So, here's the video. Also, wait! Cheems! Cheems! It's the Cheems dog. It's on a patch.
He's got a Cheem patch?
He's got a Napo patch. Oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing. I love that. I didn't notice that the first time I saw this video, but there it is, down there at the bottom left of the video. It's a Cheems. Okay, now that I hyped up over Cheems, let's watch the video.
There you go. What now, bitches? Shit's coming down.
That's the end of the video, and it's great to see that American volunteers are over there representing the brave fighting men and women of the United States of America and throwing out such memorable lines as that. I love how he threw it out. It almost sounded like a substitute teacher getting you in trouble, didn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, you could tell instantly that guy was American, like instant.
Yeah, let's listen to that one more time.
What now, bitches?
Oh man, I love it. I love it. And I'm glad to see that American volunteers are over there representing our nation in such a good light. That's actually pretty funny, and I love the Cheems badge. And so with that, we're now moving on to our final bit of Location Unknown news. And everyone, hang on to your seats, because what I'm about to show y'all is a shocker. I seriously suggest if you are driving your car, you better pull over, because if you are somewhat of an emotional person when it comes to this war, the figures and numbers I'm about to give to y'all tonight are the largest numbers that we've ever seen in a single day, and are showing that things are going incredibly well for the Ukrainians. And so I'm going to give y'all a second to process that and think about that before we move on. And so with that,
wait a minute, was that Malcolm Nance?
Wait a minute, hang on. Malcolm Nance.
I think it is.
It is! It's Malcolm Nance! What the? I didn't even recognize him. Okay, so that's actually Malcolm Nance. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I didn't recognize him when I looked at him. I think it's because of the glasses. But anyways, let's go back and watch that now, knowing this is Malcolm Nance.
There you go. What now, bitches?
That makes it even better. But with that, that's the end of that video. And now, hold on to your seats, everyone. Make sure to call in your family, gather everyone around. We're about to go over the Russian casualty statistics for today, and they are the biggest they've ever been. This is the largest day in Russian losses that we've seen. And so, let's get right into it. 650 killed today.
Damn.
650. The number of Russian soldiers killed is now 51,250. The Russians also lost another 15 tanks today, which means that they lost 1.5 BTG's worth of tank force. They also lost another 37 armored personnel carriers today, 32 artillery systems, 5 MLRSs, 3 anti-aircraft vehicles, 2 airplanes, 2 helicopters, no new boats, 4 drones, a special equipment vehicle, 24 supply trucks, and no cruise missiles. These numbers right here have never been seen. Even during the initial onset of the war, we never saw numbers this high. And I can't believe that we're seeing numbers like this. These are almost too good to be true. And
at this rate, there's no way Russia can keep up this this momentum at all.
They can't at all. There's no way. We're looking at the numbers right here, and based off of the Kyiv independence numbers so far, I have no reason to mistrust them. Sometimes they're incredibly conservative when compared to other wars of the late 20th and early 21st century, like the Gulf War. And so these figures, I'm assuming, are fairly accurate. The Kyiv Independent has given me a lot of reason to trust them. And going off of this, I can't believe this. It really speaks. I can't even provide commentary on this. These are unfathomable figures. And I gotta say, I know that someone out there, because of course we always have people who gripe, because I went through my comment section today, and of course there was someone saying, you need to understand that there are people getting hurt in this war, and there's no laughing matter in it. And I don't think that person understands that I've been here for 198 days covering this war, and that over the course of this war, I've seen that you have to cheer on the Ukrainians, and regardless of what that brings to the Russian armed forces, it does what it does. Can't really control that. These numbers mean that the Ukrainians have covered those 40 miles in the past 48 hours, and that they are obliterating Russian forces across the entirety of the country. And so with that, that is the end of our little quick summary of these unbelievable figures that have been brought out by the Ukrainians today of Russian casualty statistics. And it gives me hope that the Russians can't really keep a war going like this for much longer. We're probably going to see this war end at this point. If it kept on going at this rate for the next few months of the war, this war may be over by the end of the year. That's unbelievable to me. I don't know if that will be the case. The Russians may be able to rebound and prolong the war for a little while longer while their economy continues to collapse in the background, but it's going to be over. There's no way that the Russians can recover at this point. They've taken too many losses. They're losing ground, and they're hemorrhaging it. The Ukrainians are winning, and I'm glad to see it. And you know something I'm really glad to see? I'm glad to see that every single one of the experts at the beginning of this war that claimed that the Ukrainians would collapse, the Ukrainians would never win, and everyone who doubted Ukraine over the course of this war has now had to go and eat their own shoe and eat their own foot, and they've had to completely switch their line of thinking and their line of reasoning, and now they're saying, well, it looks like the Ukrainians are going to win this war. I'm glad to see that. You know, because it's almost like if you knew history, you could have seen this from the onset once the Ukrainians proved their mettle outside Kyiv. You could almost see this happening back then. And now it's happening as reality. It's not just a hypothetical anymore. It's not just me wishful thinking where someone can pop off in my comment section, "Enforcer, you're not an expert, you don't know anything." It's actually happened now. And I'm glad to see that the Ukrainians have proved their worth, have proved how good of a military they are, and how capable they are, and how committed they are to defending their nation, and we're watching the results of it to this day. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the location unknowns and into Kharkiv to the only bit of news we saw today, where we saw a T-90M get destroyed. This is the second one we've seen knocked out this war, and the Russians only have 30 of these, so each one of these being lost is a pretty big deal. With that, here's the video.
Подъехал, стоит на околице. Флаг, блин, непонятно какой. Блин, стреляет.
You see the T-90M fire, and then just a little while later, boom! Any second now.
Сука, да.
Yeah! And I love how the T-90M is so modern compared to every other tank that the Russians have used so far. Let me show you all the T-90M again. Actually, we got two comparable pictures right here. Here is... Oh, now it won't show me that picture. There was a picture of a normal T-90 a second. Here it is. Here's a picture of a T-90A and its armor package and how it looks. It's just an upgraded T-72 pretty much. And here's a T-90M. And even with Russians making this thing look so modern and kitting it out incredibly well compared to even a T-90A, it still goes up like a Roman candle. That's probably the funniest thing about this entire ordeal, is that no matter what the Russians are trying, what the Russians throw at the Ukrainians, it may as well be pointless. It may as well not even be modern or new tech. It all gets destroyed in the end, just like this T-90. Also notice how we could see the violent eruption of the ammunition as I guess you could say the explosion came out of the barrel first. Apparently the breech was open and the tank was reloading at that point. As you can see that right in a second.
Сука, да.
Right there. You can see that the explosion propelled out the barrel a pretty good bit. And that shows that apparently the breech must have been open and the tank was reloading its gun. And so when the ammunition exploded, of course, the pressure of the explosion is going to try and go through the areas of least resistance. And one of those was the open breech of the gun. And so a lot of the force went straight out the barrel. Yeah! And also a lot of the force went into that guy's cheer because that was a pretty good one. And I liked it. And so with that, that's the end of that video. And it's beautiful to see that another advanced, quote-unquote, T-90M has been destroyed in Ukraine. With that, that's the end of the video. And as far as we know in the Kharkiv area, the counterattack is what in the world? The counterattack is going incredibly well. We don't know exactly how well in this area, and unfortunately I can't adjust the front lines because of that, but much like the counterattack in the Balakliya area, from what we know, it's going impressively. And so with that, that's the end of that little segment of news from Kharkiv, and we're now going to be moving down to the Donbass and covering this news as well. Near the Verkno-Kamyanka area, we saw another T-90 get hit today as well. It's actually the same T-90. So with that, we're going to be moving on into the next video. Location unknown news, because it looks like I put in the location unknown, and then later on I found the location and put it down. But with that, we're now moving to Soledar, where we saw that the Wagner group was wiped out. Hey, let's give it up to the Ukrainians for making the Wagner group look like a bunch of idiots again. So let's check this out.
Доброго вечора, блин. А вообще ранок. Наколотили мужчинки за ніч, блин.
I don't know about you guys, but I think the Wagner group of the Wagner, whatever you like to call them, I think they look like a bunch of idiots at this point. Because I haven't seen them ever do anything successful. They're almost like villain henchmen in a DC comic or something like that. They're always just getting beat senseless everywhere they go, and they almost kill each other in the process. So I think that by and large, they're doing pretty okay. I have to say, I hope that the Russians keep sending the Wagner group at the Ukrainians, because that's about the best thing that the Ukrainians could ever ask for, is a bunch of incompetent goofballs from Syria that got land blasted by the United States down there are now in Ukraine and getting land blasted up here as well. And so with that,
And Enforcer, real quick, I have to interrupt you to tell you that we have over 10,000 viewers at the moment. That is a record. It hadn't happened in months. That is an extremely high amount of viewers. And also, if you are new, please hit that like button, and also feel free to subscribe.
And also, I did see that for a good bit, actually. I was just going to sit there and ignore it and let everyone just enjoy that themselves. But hey, I will take the opportunity for this merciless plug to all 10,000 of you, members of the Lee Spring Army, old and new. And if you don't know what the Lee Spring Army is, just ask around the chat. We may make a video on that in the future to explain what that is, because I don't think a lot of people will know, and it's kind of an inside joke here. But please make sure to slam that like button. And also tell your friends about this stream, because we cover the news like this every single day of the week over the past 24 hours each day, except for Mondays. We take that day off usually. And also, we run Sunday fundraisers. That's probably the shining attribute of our streams, in my opinion, is that we're actually able to help out the Ukrainians in a massive way. And so please make sure to share this with your friends, hit the like button, and do everything you can, because that helps us to keep covering this news, and it also helps us to keep making our fundraisers even larger. And also, just in case people didn't know, we will be having Operator Starsky on this Sunday. Hopefully, fingers crossed. With that, we're now going to be moving out of that bit of news and on to our last bit before we get to the news segment, where we can see that the separatists are revolting again and again and again. And here's a video of their latest revolt. So, here's a video. See them getting in an argument with a Russian?
Да нихуя вы не понимаете. И это все называется добровольцы, который сам пришел служить. А для чего вы нас здесь заставляете? Месяц дома, 2 дня дома. Зачем это делать? Если мы добровольцы.
Guess who's in charge?
Mr. Lunchtime.
Я пошел домой. Я никому ничего не должен.
Is this just me, Matthew, or is this like one of those sitcom arguments where everyone's just arguing at the same time about some silly sounding stuff?
Yeah, it feels staged for some reason.
Yeah, it kind of does, but look at this fella. Oh, God. What's he got? What is this? Bakelite AK. Not anything bad. I mean, like, both sides are using that, but look at their kid. They don't even have bulletproof vests. None of them have bulletproof vests. A lot of them are lacking helmets, actually.
Деду 59 лет. Его под руки, он 59 лет. Чем вы думаете?
Тихо. Руководство, все, сука, мародеры. С первого дня воровали, блядь, фурами сюда вывозили. Ты кто, комендант Луганска?
Вот.
Этого не знал.
Mr. Lunchtime does not give a damn.
Mr. Lunchtime is in there like, yeah, so when y'all go into the meat grinder, just let me know when. Like, this guy looks like he's not really caring. And also, one thing I'll have to say is that if the Russians cannot prepare for winter, of course, as everyone loves to say, winter is coming, I think it's going to be because of this guy. They're going to have a textile shortage trying to get him a coat large enough, and a lot of Russian soldiers are going to freeze to death because of that.
А мы в отпуск ни разу не съездили, блядь, за 7 месяцев. Ни разу.
Показываешь. Да это вафлаки, блядь, которых перестрелять надо. Все, блядь, от комбатов, сука, от Волги, блядь, от зампотылов, все возили фуры, блядь. Все вывезли.
Сюда все привезли.
Машин сколько новых, суки, пригнали сюда.
This guy is just wishing that he had never taken this position. He's just looking at him like, damn, I wish I had just never taken this command. I wish I had just stayed as a money grubber, just siphoning money out of the Russian military's budget.
А глянь, на чем мы ездим, глянь. Что ты не на нем какой-то такой? Вот что ты, блядь, давай поменяем.
Wait a minute, is that their convoy? What is that? A Ford Bronco?
Definitely not.
Their convoy is like what you would think Monty Python and the Holy Grail would look like if it was the modern day. It's all like crappy civilian vehicles. Just like the worst. But with that, we're gonna let the video continue.
Давай, ну ладно, на него махнемся.
Мы больше никуда не пойдем.
He's now putting in a call to the general manager. He's asking them if they can get a refund or not. And who in the world is this woman here holding the clipboard? Like what's she doing in this mix? She hasn't said anything. She's just been standing there. Is she like a political officer?
She looks traumatized, totally honestly.
I don't know what's up with her. Like, can someone explain to me what her position is in this entire ordeal? Because I haven't seen her do anything rather than stand there. Now he's going to walk into oncoming traffic. He's just decided that he's done with it. He's going to walk.
What if he turns around and is just like, gets slammed by a car?
Like, we literally just saw a car go blowing right by his heels just like 10 seconds ago, and now he decides to turn around, do a 180, and just start walking into the street. Oh my god, he's literally walking into the middle of the road. Quick, someone stop him.
He's definitely faking that phone call.
There's another one. Where did she come from?
She seems to be focused on something.
All the women in this situation look traumatized. Like they look like they don't want to be there either.
They're FSB.
Yeah, they're putting them on a list. Oh, they're the wives. Maybe some of them are the wives. I don't know about the one with the clipboard, but that may be why they're looking traumatized, because they're not happy with the situation either. And he's still standing in the middle of the freaking street getting ready to be run over. And so with that, that's the end of this video. And you can see that the separatists are getting a little unhappy with being separatists. And it looks like they're now starting to reconsider the idea of becoming Ukrainian, perhaps, while their commander puts in a call to the general manager and asks him if the store policy can be overturned just this one time. With that, that's the end of this video, and that's the end of this segment of news. We're now going to be moving into our final segment of news, which will be the entirety of the Kherson area and President Zelensky's speech. But before we get there, we've got to address a couple of polls, and we also have to answer 3 questions from the chat. And of course, the polls are always interesting. Matthew puts up incredibly good ones. I'd also like to note this, Matthew, real quick. We have 10,150 viewers on stream right now.
No,
that's unbelievable, honestly.
That's crazy.
But with that, I'm going to let you take it over.
All right, and moving into our second to last question segment of the stream, our first poll to address is, are you a support of the 100,000 subscriber face reveal? 72% said yes, and 28% said no. And I saw some of you in the live chat saying, don't do it. They can like reverse look up your face and figure out your name and everything. And honestly, I hadn't thought of that, but I think we're committed. Are we, Enforcer?
Yeah, we're pretty committed because, you know, that really can't do us any bad. You know, what in the world is there that it's not like we're criminals or anything. So I'm going to do the face reveal, and after that does open up a lot of territory for me, because in case if y'all haven't noticed on YouTube, a lot of people who start going into the general category, like that video I made on government cheese, they show their face a decent amount in it, and the reason why is because it cuts down on a lot of editing, because if my face isn't on screen, I have to do a lot of editing in the meantime while I'm talking, and that increases production time and also production effort. So it would actually help me out a decent bit in those categories. And also, it'd make it a lot more personable in between me and y'all. At least that's what I'm hoping. And then that'll allow y'all to, if y'all see me in public, if y'all hate me or like me, go, hey, that's the Enforcer. Or, hey, that's the Enforcer, let's get him. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll. And we're on to the next one.
And the next poll, the question was, do you agree that the glowing substance is white phosphorus? 93% said yes, and it is a war crime, and only 7% said no, it is a different substance. I did see some people saying it was magnesium, but it looks like the overwhelming majority of you believe it is white phosphorus.
I would also believe it's white phosphorus as well. I have seen some people say it's thermite, but I don't think thermite has those kinds of properties where it burns for that long. Usually thermite's kind of a quick burning substance from what I've seen, although I could be wrong. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm not exactly a chemist or anything to know that. But with that, I hope that does address the poll. And we are on to the third poll. Matthew has been churning out some polls tonight, and they are all actually pretty good. And this one looks like the best so far. And so with that, what is it, Matthew?
Wait, which one is that?
Actually, that's the poll we just addressed, and I saw the answer
I was
there.
about to say, Enforcer, there's only 2. I was about to say I put up one, I didn't even know it.
Well, I'm crediting you for a poll in the future already. And so with that, we're going to move on into the questions and answer 3 questions from the chat. Also, real quick, Matthew, could we have a count on the super chats so far tonight?
Yes. So it looks like we have about, let's see, about 40 or so super chats and about 20 or so live chats.
Okay, so I was just wanting to make sure because for some reason I felt like we've been getting a massive volume of them tonight. I don't know if that's just me, but that number is actually pretty manageable. Just in case if y'all don't know, well, if you send in a live chat question, since there's a lot of new people here, I feel like this is worth explaining. If you send in a super chat, we will answer your question regardless because that's the only way we keep the stream running. So you're literally helping us to keep the lights on and helping us to pay for gas money and all that kind of stuff and college tuition. So we, of course, answer your question first because you're helping us to keep alive. And without y'all, we wouldn't be able to answer anyone's question. However, you can ask a question without having to throw in a super chat. You can ask it in the live chat by putting @ like the @ symbol, and then the Enforcer or the Enforcer map behind it, and then type up your question, press enter, and it pops up in the chat with an orange little box around it for us, where Matthew can see it, and then he'll put it into a spreadsheet, and it may be answered later on near the end of the night at the last question segment. And so with that, I hope that kind of explains how this works here, because I know that some people may be coming through and going, because we always have them, why are you answering the super chats and not any live chats? That's because they actually put bread and butter on our tables. And so we want to thank them because they're the only way we stay alive. So with that, we are now moving on into the questions. And what do we got, Matthew?
And they do put bread and butters on our table. Bread and butters. But anyways, up first, we have a little glitch in the spreadsheet, which will take a moment. There we go. Now up first, we have a super chat from Gang Gang, who puts in a $54.86 super chat and says, can you please donate this money on your next fundraiser, as I'm in New Zealand and can't donate to the YouTube platform.
Oh, man. Let me do that real quick. 1 second. Let me put that down as a reminder. I hate to hear that Australians and New Zealanders cannot donate. That's $58.16.
$54.86.
$54.86. So let me put that down real quick. Extra for Sunday fundraiser. Now, I always make sure to honor those, but I want to make sure to let everyone know that when we do that, we do take a pretty substantial loss if we were to do that on a large amount of them, because YouTube takes 30% of that. If it's sent in as a super chat, they keep 30% and they give us 70%. And of course, I'm going to donate your total value that you've sent in to the fundraiser, because that's how it should be. And I hate that New Zealanders and Australians cannot do that. But I just want everyone to know, if you're from Australia, New Zealand, don't start sending those in mass, because that could actually bankrupt us. If we got thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars of those, we could start getting into a pretty good bit of trouble. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for sending that in, and I will make sure to add that to the Sunday fundraiser. So let me make sure I got all of that good to go, and I do. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for caring for the Sunday fundraiser. Also, just to let all of y'all know, I haven't decided which one it'll be yet. I'm trying to scout out and see if we can get another new one, like Save the Children, which we ran about 2 weeks ago. But I haven't really found one yet. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Dio Split, who is a longtime channel viewer, who says, great job, guys, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much, Dio Split, for the support. It helps us out a great deal, and it helps our channel to keep on running. And so with that, Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the last segment of news for the night.
All right, and our last one of the segment goes to Leaf Spring Army, LSA, who puts in a $50 donation and says, congratulations, gentlemen, on this amazing day for Ukraine. Enforcer, now that we have been seeing a general breakout, would you be willing to give us a prediction for how long before we see full recovery of the territories? God save the Queen, and yeah!
And also, I know, since Matthew just said that in that super chat, I know that there's going to be those people out there going, oh, it's God Save the Queen. I mean, God Save the King. It's not God Save the Queen. It's now Charles III. I know, but we are saying God Save the Queen as respect to and tribute to the Queen, which I was born under Queen Elizabeth II, and I've now lived beyond the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. And so I'm saying it in her honor, because the whole entire time I've grown up, she has been the head of state for the United Kingdom, and an incredibly good one at that. Very respectable, always carried herself incredibly well. I have a lot of respect for her as a head of state and representative of the UK. Also, I saw her in person. So with that, we're now going to be moving on into... Can you reread that one real quick? Because I think I just blew through most of it without answering decent bits of it.
So, Leaf Spring Army said, congratulations, gentlemen. Now that we're seeing a general breakout, would you be willing to give us a prediction for how long before we see full recovery of the territories?
Okay, so I can't give you exact details because, you know, I hate to say this because whenever I say that, I have an image in my mind, and so far each time it's become right, and I wish I could tell y'all what's in my head before it happens, so that way I could go, see, you know, like, I was able to get it right. You don't have to be West Point educated or from Harvard to understand what's going on here, and you don't have to be from the Pentagon either. You can just go off of basic facts and reasoning. But if I do that, my fear is that we've gotten stuff accurate enough that certain kinds of unfavorable people could be watching this stream, and that if I say something, then they go, oh, Mr. Putin, they could be doing this, and, you know, maybe they've never thought of that until I say it or something. You know, if anything happens, I don't want it to come back to me. And I know we're just a YouTube channel, you know, that's always a factor in this, is I'm just a YouTube channel, but I still don't want to be the one that could get people killed. And so I will never say exactly what the Ukrainians will probably do in the future, but considering the amount of ground we've seen them cover recently, I would feel that the Ukrainians could probably retake the northeastern area of Ukraine, everything north of Luhansk and to Kharkiv within the next 4 to 5 months. Everything south of that will probably take another 6 to 7 months, realistically. Because I can't go into my reasoning and explanations why, because it would be a massive breakdown of exactly what they would do and where they go and all that. So I can't tell you exactly, but it would be about 3 to 4 months for the northeastern area, probably around 6 to 7 months for everything south. One thing I will share with y'all, though, is that the next area where an offensive will occur, where one is not going on right now, will be in the Zaporizhia area. So with that, once again, not saying that that's certain. I'm just going off of my estimates, and I can't get into exactly how that will work, just in case if I am right. So with that, I hope that does answer the question the best I can, and thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you for keeping this Leaf Spring Army rolling along. And with that, we've reached the end of this question segment, and we're now going to be moving on into our final bit of news, which will include everything that we have not covered for the night. So, with that in mind, let's move down to Donetsk. I have to make a quick note. While we have seen small amounts of Russian progress in the Pisky area, it has largely fallen silent and completely stagnant. So for now, it seems that nothing major... Excuse me, I'm hiccuping from the coffee. Yeah, nothing major is happening in the Donetsk area as of right now. It appears to have fallen into a stalemate. And in the Zaporizhia area as well, we have not heard of any news whatsoever. It appears that the front line has fallen static here as well. However, when we move to the Kherson area, it hasn't gotten as much news as it normally gets. It only has around 7 different news videos today. It still is pretty heavily embroiled in a lot of action, and they are directly fighting against the largest contingent of the Russian army that is found anywhere on the front line right now. And so with that, we're going to start with our video to the furthest north, where we can see a Ukrainian BTR-82. Now, some of y'all who are very observant say, hey, the Ukrainians don't have any BTR-2s. What is up with this? Well, this is a Russian-captured BTR-82 that the Ukrainians have repainted and repurposed into their own armed forces. And so here's the video of them using a Russian weapon against the Russians. Ah, that's nice. The Russians are getting a little bit of their own medicine now. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's very nice to see this beautifully painted BTR-82 being used against the Russians now. You know, it's always great to see that the Russians really do care about Ukraine winning this war, and they're constantly providing some of the best Russian equipment that Russia has to offer to the Ukrainian armed forces. Without the support that the Russians have given the Ukrainians, it probably wouldn't be possible for the Ukrainians to have bolstered their forces like they've had. The Ukrainians have been able to recoup a lot of their armor losses thanks to the kind generosity of the Russian aid packages, which are usually dropped off as a sign of goodwill, just like this BTR-82. And so with that, we're going to be moving further down the front lines, and I just want to thank the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin so much for making sure that Ukraine is well-armed and well prepared to fight against those nasty, pesky Russians that everyone doesn't like, not even the Russians. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the line and closer to Davydiv, where we saw a firefight occur in Kherson today. This is from a Ukrainian perspective, and we don't know where this is location-wise. You see the Ukrainians firing a machine gun over this berm. And I can hear music in the background. That's very scary. We can also see them firing more weaponry over the berm. And jeez, they got a heavy machine gun right here. We can see them hanging out for a little bit while this firefight continues. Of course, I can't play the audio, but that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are still putting on the heat down there in Kherson. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the front line and towards the area of Tamarnye. And of course, I want to say real quick, just in case if you are new to the stream, these markers are not accurate. I just put them in the general area of Kherson, and they're not attached to anything. They're not geolocated. So we don't know if this is where these Ukrainian forces are. They could be anywhere, for all we know. We just put the markers in these areas. But I'm about to show y'all something nuts. Something insane. I didn't think we'd see this from the Ukrainians, but they've done it. It's an armored wave moving across the field to Kherson. So with that, here's the video, and this stuff is bat. So here it is. This is World War II style. Oh my God. That's honestly kind of a dated principle, but to see it in action is impressive. I believe this may be something behind the lines just as a maneuver or a drill, because I am fairly certain that the Ukrainians would not put this many tanks into a single area on the actual front. And when you see that the cameraman had someone sitting beside him on the ground pretty nonchalant, so I'm pretty sure this isn't on the front, but still, this is cool. Man, I don't know about y'all, but this puts a smile on my face to see something that cool looking. Is it effective in real combat? Not really. Is it cool to see? Yes, it's very cool to see. No one can argue about that. And so with that, that's the end of this video, and we're now moving on into the next one, where we can then see further down the line that the Foreign Legion got involved in a firefight today. And so, here's the video, and of course I want to disclaim real quick that this video is being used for news reporting and commentary purposes, which does fall under fair use. And so with that, here's the video. And you see the Foreign Legion looking around and being like, hey, what's up here? We hear some shouting in the distance. And now we can see that apparently the firefight has just begun. Oh, what was that? Did you see that, Matthew?
Wait, go back.
Look at this. Watch. He looks right, and that like little flare
Whoa.
thing. That flare thing pops off this guy and back towards the cameraman. It looks like it didn't do any harm to anyone, but what in the world was that? They're now firing into that direction in the field and the houses in front of them.
Wow, they're really out in the open.
Yeah, they are. Interestingly enough, though, the Russians aren't firing back at them. We can hear the Russians firing at the Ukrainians on the left side of the screen, but here, where the Ukrainians are clearly in the open, they're not firing at them, which is very odd.
I see some people saying it was a tracer round that went through his backpack. I'm not sure if that was the case. It looked like it bounced off his backpack.
Yeah, it bounced off of him and went towards the cameraman, which is right here, and we can see that he's totally fine, and neither of them acted like they got shot. And so I don't think it was a tracer round. I think it may have been some kind of a flare. We're going to go back and look at that again. Let's go back and examine that one more time. Alright, so, is there any way to slow this video down? No. Nah, it's
definitely bounced.
It bounced. If it was a tracer round at that speed going into a backpack, it wouldn't have bounced so easily. Like, there was no way. And it also, considering that the bullet's going so fast and had so much force, it would have had to have made some kind of noise. And it made no noise at all. So, someone said it could have been a piece of a flare. I see that Livonia Livin is saying possibly IR flare. I would have to say it's most likely a flare. I'm fairly certain that that's not a bullet, but I could be wrong. But with that, that's the end of the video. And it's really cool to see the Foreign Legion getting involved in some firefights down there in Kherson. Moving on from that, we can see a massive Ukrainian convoy on the move, once again heading further down the lines in the Kherson region. With that, here's the video. Also, I gotta mute it. I want to show you this, Matthew. This was really cool. This BTR is having to get off the road a little bit to keep moving, and it just obliterates this bush here on the right side of the road.
Oh.
Now we can see a command MTLB driving by, and... oh, Bobby, that's a Panzerhaubitze 2000 right there. Also, you can tell that they're involved in an offensive because they have that cross on the side. We can now see a Nissan following behind. Pretty reasonable car. And another Panzerhaubitze. Man, I gotta tell you, Matthew, those things just look cool. There's no
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's no SPG out there that looks that cool. And then they're followed up by a couple of Humvees. Once again, really cool to see, and it's very good to know that the Ukrainians have integrated almost without any kind of problems whatsoever Western arms into their arsenal and are using them across all areas of the front, much like those Panzerhaubitze.
Now is the White Cross a new thing the Ukrainians are doing?
Yes, it appears to be a brand new thing that the Ukrainian forces are doing now that they're involved in large offensives themselves, and it appears to be something much like the Russians tried to do with the Z's, V's, and O's. This appears to be something that the Ukrainians are doing to avoid friendly fire, just in case if a unit advances too far ahead of the rest, and then the Ukrainians confuse them for Russians. So it is something new as far as I know.
Interesting.
And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this video and into the next one, where we can then see more Ukrainian forces on the move. Also, we got to mute it, but we can see that a lot of dust is being kicked up. But they're rolling, and they're rolling forward. Also, we can see that all this guy. This guy looks like a ghost right now. His whole uniform is like white. His helmet's white. His face is white. It's all the same color. This man is a ghost. He is the ghost of Kyiv. Man, these guys are just covered in dust.
Man, I can feel my lungs burning already.
Yeah, I can feel my eyes just tearing up from all the dust that would probably be in them. But with that, that's the end of the video, and that's a pretty funny one to see how all those guys are covered in dust. Also, someone said he looks like Uncle Fester, and I'd have to say, he kind of does. Let's go back and look at him again. Oh, man.
Man, he sure is dusty.
Let me go show you this, man, in case you don't know Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. Right there. Oh. It's a spitting image. Oh man, it's all in good fun, and it's great to see the Ukrainians, regardless whether they look like Uncle Fester or not, are still advancing and pushing the Russians back. With that, we're now going to be moving into our final video from the Kherson area, where we saw the Ukrainians fighting for a village in this area. And so with that, here's the video, and also, once again, this video is being used under the premises of fair use. It's being used for news reporting and commentary purposes. And so with that, here's the video. Video's kind of grainy. It's only in 360, so sorry about that. But we hear them firing into the distance, really close, actually. And they are laying it down. These guys must have been at Fort Polk and heard that guy say, "It's a machine gun," because this guy is treating it like one. God! The barrel's probably warping at this point.
Give the man some ammo already.
Give that man some ammo. Also, some people are saying that this is actually the part 1 to the video we showed earlier of the 50 caliber on the Humvee, and as far as I know, that might be true, but it is a different camera angle considering that this camera is not attached to the Humvee gunner. It's apparently attached to the Humvee, but y'all may be correct. So I'm actually going to side with y'all on this one without a doubt. It's probably part 1 from earlier for sure. Now see, the Ukrainians have gotten out of one of the Humvees and they're just running straight into the Russians. Humvees are laying down fire. I have never seen anything like this. This is a blitzkrieg with Humvees only. That's ballsy. That takes a lot of balls. See the Humvee slowly rolling forward, supporting the infantry. And that's the end of the video. An insane one. And we can see that the Ukrainians are now using a brand new tactic, the Humkrieg. With that, that's the end of the video.
Good one.
And it's really impressive to see how ballsy and how brave Ukrainian soldiers can be when facing down the enemy. At this point, they are almost doing anything and everything that they can possibly imagine inside of those very creative and ingenuitive heads of theirs to try and get the Russians on the back foot. With that, speaking of the Kherson area, unfortunately, due to operational security issues, we cannot talk about what's been going on in this area. I did do that in the area of Balakliya. That's because we got official reports and information today, giving us a very good idea that that's what happened. But here in the Kherson area, the Ukrainian government is still remaining fairly silent, although we do get the report here and there that a couple of more villages have been liberated. And so with that, now having covered all the news from Ukraine and all the news from around the world, including the unfortunate news from the United Kingdom today, we are now going to be moving up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Zelenskyy and round out this most incredible day of news on day 198 of the war. And so, without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Also, let me turn that off. Let me make sure this is today's. And so, here's the video.
Українці, українки, з глибоким сумом дізнався про смерть її величності королеви Єлизавети II. Важка втрата для усієї Європи і для світу. Від імені усього українського народу висловлюю співчуття королівській родині, усій Великій Британії та країнам співдружності націй. Наші думки і молитви з вами. Сьогодні з візитом у Києві був держсекретар США Ентоні Блінкен. Ми провели з ним дуже корисні для обох наших країн переговори, бо робимо спільну справу, захищаючи свободу. Я подякував держсекретарю за його особливу роль в допомозі нам, президенту Байдену за рішуче і результативне лідерство, Конгресу Сполучених Штатів за незмінну двопартійну і двопалатну підтримку і кожному американцю за щире розуміння нашої боротьби. Маємо рішення президента Байдена щодо нового пакету оборонної допомоги обсягом $675 мільйонів, Оголошено і про те, що Україна отримує більше $1 мільярда із загального пакету підтримки європейських демократій. Кожен з таких кроків наших партнерів реально відображається у міцності нашої держави і усієї Європи у захисті від російського терору. Спектр тем на переговорах з паном держсекретарем був, як завжди, широким. Обговорили політичну співпрацю, нашу взаємодію у фінансовій площині. Макроекономічна підтримка зараз так само важлива, як підтримка зброєю і боєприпасами. Звичайно, приділили увагу Fast Recovery Plan і загалом відбудові України після російських ударів. Я порушив питання офіційного визнання Росії державою-терористом. Юридична реальність має завжди відповідати фактичній реальності, а це факт, що Росія стала найбільшим джерелом тероризму у світі. Можна обирати той чи інший формат процедур, ту чи іншу формулу юридичного тиску проти Росії за терор, але світ має отримати однозначний сигнал, що російському терору не буде прощення. Продовжує налагоджувати нові зв'язки для України. Провів розмову з новообраним президентом Кенії, першу в історії відносин між нашими державами. Привітав з перемогою на виборах. Домовились посилювати співпрацю. Говорили і про подолання продовольчої кризи. Робимо все для цього. Тільки за сьогодні з наших портів вийшло 4 судна з агропродукцією для азійських країн. Цими годинами на розвантаження до порту Судана заходять більше 65 тисяч тонн продовольчої пшениці. Вчора вийшов балкер з пшеницею для Кенії – більше 50 тисяч тонн. Зараз в Одесі завантажуються судна для Лівану і Лівії. У порту Південний чекає на завантаження судна, яке прямуватиме в Індію. Тобто географія українського аграрного експорту морем дуже широка. Буквально кожен день роботи зернової експортної ініціативи спростовує російську брехню щодо неї. Україна постачає агропродукцію споживачам з різних континентів, і саме наше постачання гарантує продовольчу безпеку на глобальному рівні. Провів сьогодні нове засідання Ставки Верховного Головнокомандувача, передусім щодо наших активних дій на передовій. В рамках триваючих оборонних операцій наші герої звільнили вже десятки населених пунктів. І сьогодні цей рух продовжився. Є нові результати. Загалом з 1 вересня звільнено більше 1000 квадратних кілометрів нашої території. Дякую всім, хто це забезпечив. Дякую армії, розвідникам, спецслужбовцям за кожен український прапор, який встановлено цими днями. Заслухали сьогодні на Ставці доповіді командувачів оперативних напрямків. Є певні рішення. Ставка продовжить працювати у форматі таких доволі частих засідань і нарад, щоб наші командири на місцях мали повну підтримку на всіх рівнях. І щоб Збройні сили нашої держави, розвідка, увесь сектор оборони та безпеки отримували всі необхідні ресурси, всі необхідні матеріальні, політичні, інформаційні, дипломатичні і будь-які інші засоби для ефективної оборони України і вигнання окупантів. Уся державна діяльність зосереджена на потребах фронту і захисту наших людей. Я вдячний усім українським воїнам, усім, хто виборює свободу для нашого народу. І на півдні, і на сході, і в боях на фронті, і тим, хто робить свій внесок у нашу перемогу відповідними операціями в тилу ворога. Звільнення нашої землі – це заслуга усіх, хто чітко і вчасно виконує загальний оборонний задум. А особливо хочу подякувати сьогодні бійцям 115-ї окремої бригади тероборони оперативного командування «Північ», які відзначились хоробрістю, потрібними Україні результатами в боях у лютому, у березні, коли зупиняли просування ворога, і які і зараз продовжують захищати нашу державу на північному напрямку. Також вдячний бійцям 117-ї окремої бригади тероборони, які діють на напрямку Суджа-Суми, і першій танковій бригаді, яка міцно тримає позиції на напрямку Гомель-Городня. Пам'ятаємо про усі загрози, дякуємо усім нашим героям. Хочу ще раз закликати тих, хто інформує суспільство, хто коментує воєнну ситуацію. Будь ласка, аналізуйте повну картину, висловлюйте вдячність і підтримку усім нашим оборонцям. Не забувайте ні про кого із них. Вічна слава усім, хто став на захист України, вічна слава нашому незламному народу. Україна є і буде вільною.
Slava Ukraini. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy here on day 198 of the news. And that wraps up our news summary for the night. If you were here for the news alone, I thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to cover the unbelievable and unfathomable news of Ukraine's successes across all fronts today. And of course, I'm sure that a lot of y'all are happy and have been waiting with bated breath to hear of the day that the Ukrainians finally turned the war in their favor and started to obliterate Russian forces across the entirety of the country. And so with that, we're now going to be moving into our question segment. And before we do, Matthew, if we have any polls, please take over and guide us through those polls.
All right, so we do have one poll to go over, and I'm putting another one up in just a moment. But the last poll was in reference to that video we watched about the flare or the tracer round, and that was the exact question. It looks like it's pretty much split, although the flare has a short little lead over the tracer round. 55% said flare and 45% said tracer round. So, not a really insightful poll because it's pretty close. So it looks like we're split on that one.
Interesting. I would still have to side with flare. I still think it was a flare, but it could have been a tracer. I'm not entirely sure. But then again, if it was a tracer, then that thing ricocheted like it had absolutely no velocity or any kind of force behind it off of that backpack, because it did a literal 90-degree turn and then just petered out right after it hit that backpack. But with that, I hope that does address the poll for a second, and we are now on into the question segment. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, folks, and real quick, let me grab this last super chat. There we go. And we are into our last super chat and live chat question segment of the night. If you're new, our process is we go through all of our super chats that we receive to recognize our donors, and then we go on to answer as many live chat questions as we can answer before the stream ends. And we do have quite a few, so stick around and your question might be answered. And first up from our super chats, we have a $50 super chat from Makara, who says, "It's been a while, and good job, gentlemen. I give up my spot for 2 questions in the chat combined." And Makara, thank you very much for the very generous support. And that trend is becoming very popular. And of course, we are going to honor it. So we're going to go find our live chat questions real quick, and we're going to pick one. And up first, Kyle Hagen, you are one of the lucky viewers. He said, "How did the Russian invaders get the nickname Orcs?"
The Russian invaders got the nickname Orcs because it's kind of hard for me to explain because I never really exactly got the whole story on how they were named Orcs either. But as far as I understand it, there is a group of orcs in the movie or the movie series Lord of the Rings, and the Ukrainians called them orcs because they behave a lot like the orcs in the movies. I think that's the best explanation I could give as to why the Russians are being called orcs right now. So with that, I do have to say this one very vividly. Take it that with a grain of salt. I might be entirely wrong on that, but that's the story I got as to how the Russians came to be known as orcs, and they pretty much were called that within like the first week of the war, it seems. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and thank you so much for sponsoring 2 live chats. It's starting to become a common trend that a lot of our supporters are sponsoring live chats, and I think that's very kind of y'all to do, and also spices us up. So just in case if you are still around, make sure to hang around for a while, because it now seems that we have a incredibly kind trend going on in our super chats where people sponsor live chat questions, and so your live chat may be answered incredibly soon. And so with that, I hope I was able to answer that one, and we are on to the next one.
And for Makara's second live chat donation, we're going to go to Happy Dragon, who says, "How long does white phosphorus actually burn?"
White phosphorus can burn for quite a while. It depends on, and of course, this is based off of my layman knowledge of how white phosphorus works. It can burn for hours, or it can burn for minutes. I think it largely depends on the amount of white phosphorus that is burning, but once again, I'm not entirely sure. But as far as I know, as a general answer, anywhere in between hours to minutes. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and I highly suggest that if there are any chemists or white phosphorus experts in their chat, please let us know an actual number on that. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And I almost forgot to call it out, but we received a very generous, super chat here from Tom J. Oatley, who put in a $340 donation to the channel. Very generous of you, Tom. And he didn't leave a comment.
Tom, you didn't leave a comment. I love when people send us support because it helps us to keep this thing running. But it kills me when y'all send in massive amounts of support and we can't even give you the courtesy of trying to answer a question. It kills me because I feel like I'm giving you nothing in return. And I've talked to a lot of y'all before. And y'all know, everyone knows who I'm talking about because y'all are on the Discord server and I sometimes hop in the calls there. And I know that y'all say, but you know, you're giving us the channel and you're giving us the news and that's what we're supporting you for. But it still feels like I'm giving y'all nothing because that is a base, that is a default thing for me. The news will always happen, but a question being answered doesn't happen unless if someone asks it. And so whenever we get support like that that's that big and there's not even anything attached to it, I always feel like I'm cheating you. But I thank you so much for the support. And I thank you for helping us to keep this channel running. You and BC Skyman have helped this channel out incredibly tonight. And I've got to thank both of y'all so much for helping this channel to keep alive. And also, I can see you're from Australia. And so I thank you so much for helping from the Australian Battalion of the Lee Spring Army in keeping this channel running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Rick Clay, who says, however, that river, wait a minute, he meant to say, however, that river might save the main Russian forces on eastern side of river. The Ukrainians will have to cross that same river. I don't know if they have that capability or training, question mark.
And where was that location that they were speaking of?
However, that river. I'm not sure what he means by that river.
Because right now, I hate to say it, that statement is a little vague because the Ukrainians are bordering about 3 to 4 different rivers and 3 to 4 major front lines right now. They are on the Oskil River. They're also on the Separatists Donets River up here in the north. They're also on the Separatists Donets River further south near Slovyansk. They're also on the Dnipro River down here towards the south. And so unfortunately, I don't know which river you're referencing specifically, but if you could clarify that for us, we will make sure to circle back to it and I will give my thoughts on it. And so with that, I thank you for the support, but unfortunately, due to there being so many rivers in so many different areas, I don't know which one you're talking about in particular for me to answer it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And if you can clarify that for us, we will make sure to answer it. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Magic Sky Girl, who says, Enforcer, I gotta hear that Mike Tyson again.
Oh, man. With 7,000 people on? Man, dang it. Okay. I'm the best there ever is. My defense is impregnable. My offense is impenetrable. I hope you're enjoying my question segment, answering your segment like this. I know that someone's about to sit here and say that it sounds like Mike Tyson's riding the short bus, but honestly, I don't care. I feed my pigeons Fiji water. I got to talk to the mayor, and hopefully no one's talking out of turn, because you know what I do to people who talk out of turn. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Magic Sky Girl. Of course, I've talked to you in the Discord chat a lot. And I've enjoyed it a whole load. Of course, I've talked to a lot of people in the Discord chat. I talk to people all the time. It's a show. It's a show. I talk to a lot of people. But I thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us to keep this thing running. And with that, I'll see you at the Super Slam down in Japan. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Bert Battersby, who says, pizza and beer and coffees, fun money.
Hey, well, thank you so much for the support. We don't drink beer. We don't really drink alcohol at all. We're actually two sober fellas. But I thank you so much for the support. And we will get pizza and coffee. Now, we max down on pizza and coffee. Matthew and me can shred up an extra large Papa John's pizza in under a day. Well, hell, we can go through 3 of them in a day. Well, that's the whole family, though. But we can almost go through 3 of them in a whole day and have some left over for breakfast. So we kill a pizza and we kill coffees. I mean, like, I'm down here slaughtering coffees nightly. Honestly, at this point, though, one thing I have noticed is that busy coffee is so strong that when I drink it, it almost feels like it's bleaching my internal organs at this point. And so now I'm eating as well as while I'm drinking coffee, because I feel like if I eat, maybe that'll absorb up some of that stuff, and it won't be leaving me with like gastrointestinal problems like 20 years or 30 years down the road once all that catches up to me. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we are going to make sure to slaughter some pizza and slaughter some coffee. And with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Jed Arsena, who puts in a $50 donation and says, Enforcers, don't miss the big news today is the 3rd annual Star Trek Day.
3rd annual Star Trek Day. Interesting. Star Trek Day. Star Trek Day. I used to watch Star Trek a lot. Matthew and me did. So
the original series is the best, in my opinion, I have to say.
I think I actually am a huge fan of The Next Generation. I really like the cast of The Next Generation with Picard, well, not Picard, Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes and all of them. I really liked that show. It was a really good one. But the original series is also a great one as well. I feel like they started to lose what made Star Trek, especially in the more recent ones, because also, that is correct. Star Trek Day, it is September 8th. So you did get that correct. Thank you for letting us know. And also, just to give a quick little critique on Star Trek. Star Trek back in the day always used to be positive. On Star Trek, humanity was always moving up and up. And things were getting better, and people were learning how to be more understanding of each other, more appreciative. And the world was just getting better, by and large. The galaxy was getting better, by and large, in Star Trek. But nowadays, I feel like the whole entire franchise is taking a turn to making everything seem like garbage, even in the Star Trek world, where there's nothing to be happy for. It's just a terrible place to be. And honestly, I really like the old feel. And see, y'all can tell I'm an optimistic person, so I like shows that speak of optimism. I'm always optimistic about what people can achieve and what they're capable of. And I hate that modern Star Trek has kind of moved away from that overall baseline narrative, and now it's kind of going in the direction of things are getting worse and worse in the Star Trek world instead of getting better. But with that, I hope that does answer the comment in a way. And I also see a lot of people talking about the modern shows. Just to say something clearly, I did not like Picard because they took the lovable character of Jean-Luc Picard, which was an incredible character in The Next Generation, all of the subsequent movies that they made based off of The Next Generation, and then they took him and they made him to be a bad guy, although in the movie what he tried to do was good. And then on top of that, they also made the Federation the most corrupt and deceitful, like, I guess you could say, nation in the Star Trek world, which I felt like was a huge slap in the face to what Star Trek was always trying to be, which was optimistic. But with that, we are on to the next one. I hope that goes on a quick little aside about Star Trek, and thank you once again so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and just a heads up, folks, we do have about 60 super chats to go, and then we'll get to our live chat questions. But up next, we have a super chat from George, New York's premier contractor, who puts in a $40 donation. And George, we haven't seen you in quite some time, and it's good to see you once again. He says, Viva Leaf Spring Army. Today, the whole world is Ukrainian. Did you know that before Kharkiv offensive, there was complete Russian comms blackout, including UHF? What equipment could have caused that? NATO, USA, UFO.
Well, George, I thank you so much, and welcome back. We haven't had you around for a bit from what I've seen, just like Matthew said. And also, to answer that question, I have no idea what would have caused a blackout like that. The Ukrainians could have gotten some kind of technology to make that possible, but then again, I don't really know. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about the communications arena, well, the communication technology arena, to talk about what could have done that and who could have possessed the ability to make that happen. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. But I do agree, the entire world is Ukrainian. And unfortunately, one thing I have noticed, and today is, of course, the honorable exception, because Queen Elizabeth did die, and so that is an understandable reason to have the news dominated by that, because that is massive news. You know, like, there's no other way to get around that. That's history making, pretty much. However, as far as Ukraine goes, I just don't know why the news isn't reporting on this anymore. And of course, the entire world still supports Ukraine. The governments are still supporting Ukraine. The public's still supporting Ukraine. But the news is just quietly swept it aside in favor of returning to what they do best, which is freaking people out to get ratings. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And welcome back, George. It's good to have you back. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running with your support. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And Enforcer, I think we're going to have to go ahead and do it because the super chats keep rolling in. We do have now about 65 super chats to go. I think we might have to go ahead and put a cutoff on it or we're never going to get through the stream tonight.
I can't believe it, Matthew. You're suggesting that we bring back the tradition of the cutoff.
I think we're going to have to because I'm looking at the spreadsheet right now and I'm all the way up to cell number 95.
Man, I can't believe it. Well, everyone, today's been a historical day in many perspectives. We're bringing back the cutoff. I thank everyone who's put in support for tonight and of course wants their question to be answered. We are going to answer every single super chat that has been sent in tonight, but we're unfortunately going to have to put a cutoff on those in the future beyond this point in the live stream. And so if you send in a super chat beyond this point in the stream, the super chat will unfortunately not be able to be answered because we have so many of them to get to tonight, and we also want to get to the live chat questions as well and answer those. And so with that, if you are wanting to send in a super chat or support this channel, we do have a merch store, and we also have another stream tomorrow. We're running them every day of the week, and so if you would like to send in a super chat with a question attached, just send it in tomorrow, first thing on the stream, and it will probably be one of the first ones in line. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, everyone, for the support, and we're going to continue on answering the 65 remaining super chats we have, and then get to the live chats as well. And so with that, we are back to answering super chats.
All right, and up next, we have a $25 super chat from Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer and Matt, what a day in history. This should give Russians bad dreams about Crimea, shaking in their boots, or maybe crapping in their pants. Could we have a yeehaw in unison, please? Slava Ukraine.
All right, let's see if we can do it in unison. 3, 2, 1. Yeehaw! Well, not really in unison, but it was close enough. I hope that was good enough for you. But moving on from that, and also to address that super chat, could you reread that one real quick?
He said, let's see here. Trying to get the question. He said, this should give Russians bad dreams about Crimea because of today's events. They are shaking in their boots.
And I will have to agree. The Russians are probably already have nightmares from the 6.5-month-long war, and at this point, they're just getting PTSD. Well, the Russian government, I'm not talking about the soldiers. The Russian government is probably getting PTSD of this whole entire endeavor and how poorly it's blown up in their face. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $21 super chat from none other than Duncan VR. And you know what that means, folks. It's time for me to get put through the ringer like the Russians. Duncan says, Andrew drank too much coffee tonight, LOL. Woof, meow. Doctor went to chop Putin's shaky leg off, and he slipped and got the sack. Oh my goodness.
What?
Woof, woof. Yeehaw, Baba. Matt looked like Mr. Lunchtime. No, I don't. I look like the total opposite of Mr. Lunchtime, but oink.
and to be honest with y'all, Matthew's actually pretty big. I'm just playing. Matthew is actually pretty thin. Out of the two of us, I'm actually
not really thin, but not Mr. Lunchtime either.
Yeah, that's true. Out of the two of us, I am the more stockier of the two. Now, you know, I'm not going to get into that too much. You'll see that on the face reveal, which at this rate, let me go check. That'll probably happen probably within the next 2 weeks at this rate. But with that, I do thank you for the support, Duncan VR, and also, you're throwing out the shade at both Matthew and me. What's going on here? You said I've been over-caffeinated. I drink the same amount of coffee every night, but tonight was an exciting night because the news is unfathomably great. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan VR, and also, thank you for torturing Matthew again. And I hope that the live chat enjoyed that as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Kaltenberg, who says Christmas in Crimea.
And I thank you so much for the support, Kaltenberg. And I would have to say it's Christmas everywhere in Russian-occupied territory because everyone is about to get a little present called Liberation. And it's coming around pretty soon. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, Kaltenberg, for not only being an Old Guard Lee Spring Army member, but also one of our longtime channel supporters and also heavily involved in our community. You've been here forever, and I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep running and being a pillar of this live chat community. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Bobucks Guy, who says, damn, two important people recent history died within a week of each other. Maybe Putin could be next. Third time is a charm.
Well, I thank you for the support, and of course, I don't want to throw them into the pool with Putin. And also, there's a third. Gorbachev died, Queen Elizabeth died, and Shinzo Abe was assassinated. He was actually the first of the three. And it's very interesting to see how many influential political figures have died over the past few months in this war, and we've been able to report on every one of them but Gorbachev because we got copyright strike that day, so we didn't get to talk about it at all. But it's still crazy to see, and if we were to go off that line of reasoning, although I say that none of those people are in the same category as Putin, hopefully Putin is next. But still, in light of what happened with the Queen today, that was very sad to me because I'm actually, in case you all don't know, Matthew and me are like 90% British. We're not those people who go around and say, you know, like I'm like 1/1,000,000th of a Briton and so therefore I'm Scottish or something. Like we're actually like 90% British. And so a lot of our family comes from Britain. Of course, a long time ago, we were some of the first, I guess you could say, settlers here in the United States historically, you know, in the 1730s. But still, moving off of that and talking about Britain, we have gone over there, we've been to Britain, and I've seen the Queen up close. Like, I was actually within about 6 to 8 feet of her, and she was riding by in a car. You know, that's not really meeting her or anything, but I think that's a lot closer than most people get. And so, hearing that the Queen had died just today was a huge shock to really everyone in my family. I think it was a shock to everyone in the world because one thing that was always a certainty through most people's lives is that while everything could be going on, the Queen was there and alive in Britain, and now she's dead, and it's really come as a shock to me, and I think everyone in the world. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, let me recognize 2 donations that were left without comments. We have a $20 super chat from DJ Swan. We also have a $20 super chat from Tony Mascaron Fernandez. Thank you very much to both of you for your support. That is very kind and generous of you both. And thank you for being viewers of the Enforcer channel. And moving on to our next one, we have a $20 super chat from Larry Wagner, who says, there is a YouTube guy claiming Russia has 1,000 tanks in the Izyum area, but I doubt it.
Oh, I doubt that entirely. I agree with you completely there. 1,000 tanks in the Izyum area. If we measured that out with a marker, just real quick, let's just say this whole area is the Izyum area, so that way we can get a fairly good idea. About like that. So that way we can try and get the closest measurement possible. That's a 262 square mile area, and so that means there would be almost 4 to 5 tanks for every square mile in that area, which seems pretty far-fetched. A square mile sounds big until you see a drone flying over the fields, and then a square mile looks incredibly small. And so I believe entirely there's definitely not 1,000 tanks in that area. Maybe 100 or less than 100, but 1,000 is a big stretch for sure. And if the Russians had that many tanks in reserve, why didn't they use them to stop the Ukrainians from blitzing their way to the Oskol Reservoir? So with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I entirely agree with you. That sounds like a far-fetched statement in my opinion. It just doesn't seem like there's enough land down there to support that many tanks. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support and bringing that up.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Ted Ajuns, who says, I wonder if y'all have seen Bald and Bankrupt's interrogation video for his arrest and expulsion from Russia last month. Australian in Belarus has the video. He was doing some fast talking.
Australian in Belarus has the video. I have not
He says, oh, wait a minute. He says YTR, Australian in Belarus has the video.
Interesting. I have not seen that video. I will try and look at it, but I have seen most of Bald and Bankrupt's videos. He's a pretty interesting fella. You know, he travels around, does some pretty interesting stuff. A lot of people enjoyed his channel, and he had like 3.2 million subscribers when he stopped his video series. And it was sad to see him go, because he showed a lot of what the world looked like where people don't go on vacation. And so, unfortunately, I haven't seen it though. Just to answer that quick, you know, just straight out, I haven't seen it, but I will try and pull it up and take a look at it and see about that police interrogation, because that would be interesting to me for sure. And so with that, I thank you for the support. Haven't heard about the video and I hadn't seen it, but I will make sure to take a look at it now. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than the Sweaty Chungus, who says, no more being scared about trolls and psychos. It's time to have a backbone. To do the face reveal, unless you look like Quasimodo. Nevertheless, this Chungus will defend you guys. And Sweaty Chungus wants us to man up. He doesn't care. He said, come on.
And also, I thank you so much for the support, Sweaty Chungus. I don't look like Quasimodo, but I also don't look like Henry Cavill, if y'all know what I'm saying. I'm not a perfect specimen, but I'm also not a horrendous beast. I'm somewhere in between, a mix of horrendous beast and Henry Cavill. But that's also saying way too much there anyways. But with that, I am going to do a face reveal at this point. If a Russian bot's got a problem with me, then let him. Looking around this room, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guns. So I don't think anyone would be able to do anything, because it seems like there's one in every corner of the room at this point. So with that, also, by the way, most of them are reenacting guns, you know, so they're like 100 years old, bolt action or something like that. So it's not exactly like a wall of like scars and AR-15s and stuff like that. It's more like 1903s, Krags, Brown Bess, and Remington 700. So with that, I hope that answers the comment. Of course, I don't want anyone's hopes to be led up or anything. I want y'all to know, face reveal, while a lot of y'all will probably be excited to see what I look like, I'm not that impressive of a person. I'm normal just like the rest of y'all, and while I do talk incredibly well and am able to talk about this quite well, my looks are not as impressive probably as I talk for most of y'all. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support, Sweaty Chungus, and backing us up no matter what. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from W, who says, every single week, the Ukrainians just keep impressing me with their tactics and savvy implementation. Every day it feels like Christmas with the new gains that they make. Slava Ukraine.
Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much for the support. And also, I would actually have to tell you, I was kind of getting a little nervous about the Ukrainians over these past month and a half, because they weren't doing anything at all, and the Russians really weren't doing anything. And when we were sitting there through that period, in the back of my head, I was getting prepared for 3 years. I was sitting there thinking, this is going to be a very long war, it's going to go on forever, and the Ukrainians and the Russians are going to sit here and slug it out in these fields until it turns into World War I. However, the past 2 weeks have shown me that that's not the case, and this war is now shifted entirely in Ukraine's advantage, and they're now going to steamroll the Russians everywhere. And so I'm glad to see that, and I'm glad to know that they will be doing that. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Bash Girl, who says, this is in memory of the Queen. Please pick a question from a UK LSA member. Condolences to the UK, and God bless Ukraine. And Bash Girl, I do agree completely, and thank you very much for your support.
And also, I do thank you for the support as well, Bass Girl. Of course, Queen Elizabeth passing is a very unfortunate thing. Of course, a historical thing as well. Every single one of y'all who witnessed that news today as it came out witnessed a turning of a page in history. I would say this is very similar to the death of Queen Victoria, who also reigned for an incredibly long time in Britain and defined a complete era. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. And if we could, Matthew, could we find a live chat from a British viewer and have that answered?
All right, and I believe Henry M is a viewer from the UK, and his question is very similar to mine earlier. He says, why do the Ukrainians have a white cross on their tanks?
The white cross on the Ukrainian tanks appears to just be the symbol that they chose. However, I did hear someone say that the Germans used a cross when invading Germany in Operation Barbarossa. German cross. No, wait a minute. Cross. World War One. World War Two. Sorry about that. Let me flip that over here real quick, just in case if there's something that YouTube wouldn't like for me to show. Let's see. German identifying marks. World War II. I gotta see if this is true or not. Images. You know, at a quick glance, I'm not seeing a cross being used by the Germans. If they're talking about the Balkan ruse, then no, that's not a Balkan ruse that the Ukrainians are using.
Now, Enforcer, I have to say, this is ironic, but the next super chat in the queue is from William Allen, and he put in a $20 super chat, and he said, the white crosses are just to piss off Putin. The Germans used white crosses during the invasion of Poland, LOL. And William Allen, I have no idea how that got in that exact spot, but you literally answered the question.
Well, actually, as far as I can tell, I think he's talking about the Balkan ruse. And let me see if I can pull that up real quick. The Balkan ruse. The Balkan cruise. Sorry about that. This is a Balkan cruise right here. He's talking about the one in World War II that did not have the flared sides to it. The Germans still use this symbol to this day. However, I don't think that's the identifying mark that the Ukrainians are using, because let me flip this over to my screen just in case there's something on Google Images I cannot show. The Balkan ruse has these little things on the sides. I can't show it to y'all because I'm scared YouTube might get me in trouble for that. It has these things on the sides, and if the Ukrainians were actually using something like that, it would look a little different. I think that cross may be like a... I can't really explain the meaning behind the cross. I think we'll have to try and get an explanation for it, but I know that it's not a German one. Also, I see someone said use white crosses on their invasion of Poland. German invasion of Poland. Let's pull up some pictures and see if we can find any of those markers on those vehicles. So images. Let's see here. Vehicles. Surprisingly enough, the Germans didn't really have a lot of vehicles in the war. And there's white crosses. There's white crosses on the Panzer IIs. But I don't think the Ukrainians are using the white cross in that meaning because, you know, considering that the Russians call them Nazis, wouldn't that be kind of weird for them to pick the cross in reference to the Nazis? That would, you know, kind of be just affirming the point at that point that the Russians would be making. So I think they're using the cross for something else, but we'll try and get some more information on that and see what the cross actually stands for, if anything. So with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope that answers the question at least somewhat.
And also, William Allen, thank you very much for that $20 support. You did answer his question pretty decently, in my opinion, but thank you very much. I didn't want to gloss over your super chat. We do appreciate your support. And up next, we do have a $20 super chat from Little... Let's see here. I'm not sure if this is a troll name or not. I'm not saying you're a troll, but I'm not sure if that name is something I can read off on the stream. So I'm just going to say Little Jam. And they say, suggestion to wear the balaclava mask on the next stream and then remove on the following stream for the final unveiling. Keep up the good work, and Slava Ukraine.
You want me to turn into Life of Boris? Hello, everyone. I cook up borscht. But with that, I thank you for the support. That's a pretty good idea. But I think if we're going to do it, we might as well just go big or go home and do the face reveal from the start. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. Pretty good idea. I might consider it. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep running.
And also, Little Jam, just to clarify, I don't think I said it right earlier. I didn't mean to call you a troll. That was not my intention. I meant to say your username is something I can't read on the stream. So I kind of poorly worded that. But anyways, hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. Up next, we have a $17 super chat from Eli Lassetti, who says, I'll give my question to the live chat. And there's that cool trend again. So let me go get a live chat question in honor of Eli Lassetti. And that question goes to Brain Fuel Network, who says, will the Russian talking heads now back channel's request for a temporary ceasefire?
The Russian back channels will most likely not be requesting a ceasefire, because if they do something like that, that's something they have to publicly come out with to the Russian public, and I don't think the Russians at this point, from what we can tell, are willing to do anything like that, because it could lead to pretty disastrous results, at least domestically within Russia, as people would probably start to riot because they've been lied to the whole time. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, at least in a shorter way. But then again, I could be wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. So with that, I hope that answers the question. Thank you so much for sponsoring another live chat question. That's really kind of y'all to be doing these days, and it helps us to get to live chat questions a little bit earlier on and answer more of them. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $14 super chat from VPCZX, who says, Enforcer COVID update. I finally ate after 3 hard days. In what way will the UAF reach Luhansk City from Kupiansk front, and is it even possible?
Well, it's good to hear that you're doing better from COVID. That's great. I'm glad that you finally did eat, because that means you are improving, and hopefully you'll continue on the uptick from here on. Now, to answer the question about how the Ukrainians will reach Luhansk from Kupiansk, that's one I can't really get into, but it's pretty obvious they will just loop over the reservoir, go north, and then go south. But I can't go into the exact details of where they'll go from there, because then I could be getting into their exact plans, operational security, and then a whole bunch of things could happen that may be my fault. And I don't ever want to be at fault for getting Ukrainian soldiers killed, because I consider operational security to be very serious. But with that, I do thank you for the support, and I'm glad to hear that you are getting better, and I hope that you can keep on telling the entire Lee Spring Army about your improving story, so that way everyone can know that you are getting better, because we all do care about you, and I hope that you continue to do perfectly fine and can get right back to normal. Right as rain, as they say. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Nigel Curtis, who says, towards Enforcer and Enforcer match trip to Ukraine one day soon.
And thank you for the support. Also, that's really cool to hear that you want us to go to Ukraine. We've been thinking about going to Ukraine after the war, and I think we may. It depends on how things are going at that point, and if it's going well in all directions, then we will probably go over there. And so thank you for supporting the Trip to Ukraine fund, because we might need it in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, folks, just a quick reminder, we have had to put in a cutoff on our super chat, sadly, tonight, because we have so many to go. So sadly, we're not going to be able to get to any beyond the last point we announced that, or otherwise we'll be here until probably about 2 in the morning, and we do have class and college work to get to tomorrow. So hopefully we have an understanding there, but also I just want to say thank you to everybody for your support, and if we could get to your questions, we'd love to, but we have to be sane tomorrow. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $12 donation from Junebug, the one without the 72 on the end. And Junebug, thank you very much for your support of the channel as always, and sticking with us. And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Shannon Jane, who says, just a heads up, it's pronounced Panzer Haubitze. Love you guys.
And thank you for the support. And of course, we try our best to pronounce things, but we do screw up every once in a while. I will try and do that in the future, but unfortunately on those things, I can hardly make any guarantees. It'll probably take me a long time to change my pronunciation into that, but I will give it a good college try. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, now for the A-10. Since 1984, 7 A-10 have been lost in combat, 0 combat damaged, 6 during Desert Storm, 1991, with 2 pilots POWs, 1 pilot killed, but in return, credited with 2 Iraqi helo kills. Cheers.
And also, thank you for the support, and thank you for providing a little bit of information about the A-10. The A-10 has done pretty well, but once again, I do think that it is getting a little bit dated in the modern sphere of war and how it's starting to evolve. But still, a pretty cool plane, and it does look pretty mean. That's the best way I can explain it, is that it's a mean looking plane. And so with that, I thank you for the support and also giving us a little bit more information about the A-10. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right. And I forgot all about the poll. It's been running for 40 minutes and it has 2,000 votes on it. Okay, folks, so we're going to have to address the poll. And the question was, with Ukraine's recent offensive, may the war be winding down toward a Ukrainian victory soon? It looks like this poll is pretty evenly split. 38% say no, the war has a long time to go, and that appears to be slightly the more popular option. 34% say yes, the end is near for Russia, and I hope that's the option that actually comes true. And 28% says maybe. So, Enforcer, real quick, what are your thoughts on that poll?
I believe, in my opinion, to make it very short so that we can get back to the questions because we got a lot of them, I think that the war may be coming to a close here in the future, and the end may be near for the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address the poll, at least in a short way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $10 super chat from Rick George, who says, "Rest in peace to Elizabeth II, the only monarch I have known. Your respect and commitment for duty is a credit worldwide. Hopefully, Enforcer, if you get into politics, you will put duty before politics."
And I thank you for the support and also the kind words to Queen Elizabeth and me. Of course, Queen Elizabeth was one of the heads of state that I look to with the highest regard. She put herself into great account everywhere she went. She never once had a time where you could look at her with shame or anything like that. She always carried herself as a proper queen and a proper head of state. If I was to become the president of the United States, my goal would be to try and elevate the office of the president back to a position where, while it is a political role and of course has to conduct action and pass laws in the United States, I would still want it to be a position that people could look to and say, I can look to the president for, I guess you could say, stability and respect, because he has made the position a respectable one. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, of course, this is a poor statement now, considering it's pointless, but I wished good health to the Queen. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from WL, who says, "Emotional scene. I actually cried. A rumor has it that U.S. would send 18 more HIMARS to Ukraine. Is it true?"
I have not heard about the 18 HIMARS, but I did hear that the United States approved another $2 billion aid package, which is pretty good to see, and I don't know if there are more HIMARS included in it. I'll have to go look at the package in detail to see, but that may be the case. It's just that I don't know enough information right now to tell you for certain. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does answer the question in a way. And also, I just saw someone in the live chat, Matthew, say that can we not go into the whole Queen Elizabeth thing? She was a colonizer. And I don't know how you can call Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, man.
Now, I'm going to say this real quick. I don't know how anyone could call Queen Elizabeth a colonizer when the British Empire literally dissipated in her reign and it now doesn't even exist. Because if she was a colonizer, then how come India isn't the British Raj and there isn't a massive swath of Africa that's under direct British control? Tell me that. Once you can get that answer to me, come back and tell me that Queen Elizabeth isn't a colonizer, because she's not. So with that, also I'd like to say, I try and keep things as respectable as possible. I don't care who the person is. If a head of state or a leading figure in a nation dies, I will give them the respect that's due to a person who has passed. I find it very cheap to try and get out low blows on people when they've just passed, especially on someone like Queen Elizabeth, who carried herself incredibly respectfully the entire time. And so with that, I hope that addresses that real quick, because I believe things ought to be tasteful, and if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, regardless whether you agree with it or not. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And folks, you wouldn't believe how many times I have heard that line in university. I don't know what's wrong with a lot of young people these days, but something is going tremendously wrong in our universities. I hear some atrocious things from some people. But up next, we have a $10 super chat from Laszlo Uriel, who says, "I lost count of how many times I cried for the people of Ukraine during your coverage of Russia's invasion, but today was the first time out of happiness. Thanks for bringing it to us, and Slava Ukraine."
And thank you so much for the support, and I'm glad you did enjoy today's news. There's been a lot of tumultuous times in the course of this war. I've tried to keep up a good chipper attitude through it all, but there was times that I too thought that things were going incredibly rough and things would only get rougher. But now we've crested that hill and we're coming down the other side, and the Ukrainians are steamrolling the place. So I'm glad to hear that today was the first time you cried tears of joy, and I thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing going. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Heather Fitzgibbon, who does not leave a comment. But Heather, you have been around for longer than I can remember. I think you were here before I was even here, if I'm right, Enforcer.
I think so. I actually think they were around before you were here.
Yes, so Heather is a channel legend, and thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from John Gonzalez, who says, Dino Ress made a good point about doxing. Might not be worth the risk, so I changed my vote in the survey.
Can you reread that one real quick?
He says, Dino Ress made a good point about doxing. It might not be worth the risk, so I changed my vote in the survey. And he's referring to the poll that I ran about the face reveal.
Oh, well, I thank you for the support, and I still think that it's okay to do a face reveal, because I was thinking about it. If Operator Starsky is showing his face on stream as a lieutenant in the Ukrainian military, and you can get a lot of information on him pretty easily, and no one's gotten him, it ought to be okay for me. At least that's my line of reasoning right now. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment in a way. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, a big shout out to Aquatico50 for putting in a $10 super chat and saying, what will the Russians retreat with? Weapons or ammo, or the coveted toilets? Life is full of hard choices. They could keep a tally of stolen toilets, retreat, and say they won. It's a win-win for everyone.
Well, I think if the Russians were to retreat, they will most likely be taking the washing machines and toilets first, and then the MacBooks, and they'll pack those into the ballistic plate carriers. That's just usually how the Russians do it, and they always put their own material needs above their survival needs, like weapons and such things. And so, with that, I hope that answers the question in a way, and I do think that the Russians most likely will retreat with whatever they can try and bring back to Russia. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does answer the question, which was a pretty good joke. And we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat once more from Ted Ajuns, who says, to clarify a statement of yours last night on war crimes, you said the U.S. has had war crimes. Yes. INDIV have done crimes. To be clear, Russia commits them as matter of tactics. As 20-year-old Army combat vet, IAPPR clarity.
And also, I thank you for the support. And to address that real quick, I did make that distinction. I said, you know, the U.S. is an arbiter of morality along with the British in the Second World War, but they did commit the occasional war crime. And then I went on to say that we usually bore down on those pretty well, and then went on to talk about how the Soviets did it as a form of tactic. So I think that you may have not understood the comment in its entirety, because I pretty much did say the same thing. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Carolyn Evans, who says, I sent a screenshot from Twitter and tagged Enforcer in the general chat in the Discord. Please see it and check into the info. That guy we saw captured with 2 stars is a general. Tried to hide.
I thank you for the support, but everyone, of course, I've had a lot of people, I guess you could say, I don't know, rivet counters, ribbon counters, I don't know what you'd want to call them, button counters, that said there, actually it's a lieutenant, because, there's 2 stars, and no other rank in the Russian army has 2 stars, and we all know, we looked at it last night on stream, there are 3 ranks with 2 stars in them. They're just arranged different ways and have different sizes, but from what we could tell, the rank of that specific guy was a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel.
They put him in a gurney. He's a lieutenant colonel. But anyways, the guy's a lieutenant colonel because if he was a lieutenant general, which is the other way that the two stars are arranged, the stars would have been arranged vertically instead of horizontally, which we saw on that guy the other day. So I'm going to stick to my guns and say he was a lieutenant colonel. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment. And thank you for the support. And I will make sure to check out that link if I can and see if there is any validity to changing my point of view on that or not. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Taras Salyuk, who says, "Thank you for your work and Slava Ukraine."
And also, thank you so much for supporting what we do. It does mean a lot and helps us to keep this thing on going. And also, Slava Ukraini. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And moving right along, we have a $10 super chat from Trolling Them Softly, who says, "Just popping in to say hi. I've been busy. Also, I demand you drink a beer when you turn 21.
Well, I thank you so much, Trolling Them Softly, for hopping back in. I hope you've been having a fun time out there. And of course, I hope you've enjoyed however much you were able to watch of tonight's stream. I will probably drink a beer when I turn 21, but it's not anything I'm going to do on a regular basis. You know, alcohol is, I suppose, fun for some, but I just don't think I will find it all to be all too fun. Usually, whenever people drink, they usually drink to let loose, and I by and large think I'm already pretty loose as far as having fun, joking around and stuff like that. So I don't want to get more drunk. I don't want to get more loose because I already feel like I'm having a fun time as it is right now, but I will give it a try. And so with that, I thank you for the support once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have an $8 super chat from Level 70, who says, "The U.S. is sending Hellfire missiles to Ukraine. What additional capabilities will that give the Ukrainians?"
The Hellfire missiles, I would say, are pretty similar to the Brimstones that the British have already sent over, and so it's not going to provide any extra abilities that they don't already have. It's just going to be the same precise, I guess you could say, anti-tank weaponry from a different platform. I would guess you could mount those on a helicopter like an Mi-8 or an Mi-24 with a little bit of tweaking and probably use those fairly well in that way. Or you could mount them on a truck and fire them from there. Either way. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, at least in a small way. But I don't think it's going to be adding anything to the Ukrainian armed forces. It's just going to be further fleshing out that field of anti-tank weaponry. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Dad Good, who says, "Enforcer, if the Russians get pushed back all the way to their borders, will the war end or just continue on the borders? And thanks again for all you guys do."
I think also, thank you so much for the kind words, but I think if the Russians were pushed all the way back to the Ukrainian border, they'll have taken so many losses at that point, and the entire war will be looking so abysmal that they would have to back out at that point. Considering if they get pushed back that badly, they obviously do not possess the ability anymore to continue an offensive any time in the future, and so even letting the war continue on their borders will just mean that the Russians will always be under a sanction, so they'll never be able to get the technology to rebuild their forces, and they'll still be losing a decent amount of vehicles and equipment and manpower on those front lines every day. So I think at that point, the Russians would most likely try and bow out of the war and get some kind of peace agreement. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and thank you so much once again for a really interesting one there. That was a good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $6 super chat from Killer300AD, who says, "I love the smell of cooked Russian tankers every Enforcer stream."
Jeez. Well, we don't show them a lot, and in fact, we don't really show any of them. But I'm glad that you do enjoy the smell of pulled orc. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "This is for a live chat question, and thanks to PsyOps for starting this. And we, of course, are going to honor that." And Santiago, this question is sponsored by Mr. Flores. And we're going up to the live chat right now. This one goes to Happy Dragon, who says, "Since Ukraine does not have death penalty, how will they be able to support all these captured war criminals?"
That's a pretty good question. I'm not entirely sure how they will. I guess they'll just start building new prisons for them, maybe keep them in poor conditions, and not put a lot of money into keeping them around. I don't really know, but that's a really tough one, because considering that they don't have the death penalty, that means that every time they prosecute a Russian for their crimes, they're going to go into prison, and then they have to constantly upkeep them from there. So I'm not really sure. I can't really give you an answer to that. But with that, that's a really great question. I think that's one worth discussing in the live chat and probably trying to mill out an answer for in the future. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much, Happy Dragon, for bringing up a really good point. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I typically don't do this, but I'm going to have to call somebody out tonight. Eddie Rodriguez said in the chat, why don't we cover the atrocities committed by both sides? So I asked him a simple question instead of just dismissing him as a troll, and said, please name me one example of a Ukrainian atrocity on record. He hasn't answered my question, and he's never going to answer it because he doesn't have an answer. So Eddie is trolling, and Eddie is going to have to go. And there he goes right now.
Oh, do your own research. I love how he's going to sit there and say that like he has some kind of proof that the Ukrainians have done something, and then sit there and tell you to do your own research. That's so stupid. You know, I can't, just to go on a quick little monologue real quick. I cannot stand, Matthew, when people sit there and say something like, actually it's this way. And you go, well, can you show any proof for it? No, you find it. It's like, well, what are you even talking about? If you're not willing to back up your point, don't even mention it. You know, that's my whole saying in life. If you come up to me and tell me that I'm wrong because it's some other way, and I say, well, can you show any proof for that? And you say, no, you find it, forget about it. Your point's pointless at that second. So with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. And thank you for bringing that up real quick, Matthew, because that was a really goofy one.
And we just opened a fresh box of Bot Be Gone. But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Michael McKay Blair, who says, Enforcer, do you think it is feasible to send a team to Ukraine to measure the distance that turrets have landed from the parent tank?
Great question. It is possible to send such a team, but would they be safe? That's another question. We can't guarantee their safety, but I can tell you it's 100% possible for a crew of people to get into Ukraine and start traveling around from tank to tank and trying to find ones that are still in the field, and then measure the distance that the turret has flown across the ground instead of vertically. So with that, I hope that answers the question in a way, and I thank you for the support. That was a really interesting one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Steve Marshall, who says, what are the chances that Ukraine strategically overruns real Russian borders in some places? Would that create problems or tension with Western allies?
Can you reread that one real quick?
Yes, Steve says, what are the chances that Ukraine strategically overruns real Russian borders in some places? Would that create problems or tension with Western allies?
I don't think it would create too many problems or tensions with Western allies for Ukraine. I think it would cause a little bit of fear for the Russians, because you got to remember, it's already happened. It happened at the village of, let me think of what was the name of it. Oh, it was somewhere in this area. I'm trying to think of it. It was Repyakovka. The Ukrainians crossed the border, walked over there and destroyed an entrenching vehicle, and then just walked back. That was a whole 1.5 mile walk they took into Russian territory, and a 3-mile round trip. And it didn't cause any kind of massive row anywhere in the world. It wasn't even really talked about much, rather than on this channel. So in that regard, I don't think it would be much of a problem to anyone. In fact, I don't think anyone would care. And that's honestly a good thing. And so with that, I hope that answers the question with a little bit of precedent that's already happened before. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Super Action General, who says, how many more gestures of goodwill do the Russians need to show until they fully collapse on all fronts? Also, can I get a yeehaw?
And you just did. And also, to answer that question, I think that the Russians will probably go through three more gestures of goodwill until this war ends. The first will be the withdrawal from the Kherson area. The second will be the withdrawal from the northern area. Then all they have left is the land bridge in between Crimea and the DPR. And then their final gesture of goodwill will be to give that up, at least the area that they control, the land bridge area. And that will be their final bit of goodwill. Then it will probably become a part of negotiation whether they give up Crimea and the DPR and LPR back to Ukraine, or if they keep it. with the going rate of how successful the Ukrainians are right now, I don't think the Ukrainians would be willing anymore at a negotiating table to sign a white peace. I think they might want the DPR, LPR, and Crimea back at this point, considering how well they're doing. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and thank you so much for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Mr. Awesome Noob, who says Ukraine baited and trapped a larger part of their army in Kherson, then they smashed and weakened the line. Did Ukraine pull a bait and switch?
I don't think they did pull a bait and switch, because I think the Kherson, I think the Kherson campaign's objectives are still in full swing. They're still trying to race for Kherson, but I do think that they already knew, while we may be able to achieve our objectives, we may be able to knock out two birds with one stone. We might be able to get a large portion of the Russian army on the western bank of the Dnipro, cut them off from their supplies and a route of retreat, and then just wipe them out systematically over time. That could have been a plan for the Ukrainians, and then at the same time, they're moving Russian forces from everywhere else around the front, and so they can exploit weak spots like they did near Balakliya. So I actually think it was a two-pronged idea, and it wasn't just a simple bait and switch. I think they saw that they could take advantage of every single facet of the situation. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And also, folks, just excuse me. Oh, wow, we're almost choked there for a minute. But just one more reminder that we have had to put a super chat cutoff, so sadly we can't answer any new super chats, but we do appreciate the thought and consideration and the support. And we're going to have to move on to our next super chat because we still have quite a few to go. So up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dino Ress, who says, face reveal is a bad idea, Enforcer and Matt. The chance for retaliation or doxing by Russian trolls is not worth the risk. Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you for the support, Dino Ress, but I think that there's not really a lot of doxing or trolling that the Russian bots could do. In case if y'all don't already know, there's a small amount of people out there who have already found out who I am out of the channel. So, you know, there's that. It hasn't really affected me much, rather than them just trying to riff on me. So with that, I hope that does address the comment. And also, I'm not scared of no bots. Ain't no bot gonna scare me. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Dino Rez. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for caring about us. But I assure you, I think we're A-okay. But I may come to regret this decision. With that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Junebug72 that did not leave a comment this time, but thank you very much once again for your support. And moving right along, we have a $5 super chat from Richie MC, who says, I imagine Enforcer Matt as a T-1000 Terminator with the ability to shapeshift into anything. And Richie, you're somewhat accurate, but personally me, I imagine myself as a honey badger with a 50 cal strapped on top.
Honestly, I imagine Matthew as a 6'1" white male wearing I'm giving a police profile. But yeah, anyways, I thank you for the support. And Matthew is not a T-1000 Terminator, but he's pretty okay. So once you'll see on the face reveal, I'm not trying to say too much, but you will see on the face reveal, and looking at our subscriber figures for the night, we may be getting there pretty soon, maybe within a week. I don't know, so we might want to start filming that, Matthew. But with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again.
Should we do a podcast style filming for this, folks? You tell us in the live chat. But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Billy Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, who said, what happened to my poll about Putin's nickname from yesterday? And he lists all the options again. So Billy Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, I was going to run the poll, but one of the options kind of scared me a little bit because YouTube kind of takes a strange approach to some of the words in one of those options. So I had to not put the poll up. But if it wasn't for that, I would have run it.
And so with that, I hope that does address the comment. I'll let you talk to Matthew, because if Matthew deemed it a little unsafe, I didn't get to hear the whole thing, so I don't know what it says. But if y'all can discuss it out, maybe a poll can be run. I don't know. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and let's see if we can get that poll up somehow, some way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat Once more from Sweaty Chungus, who says, I'm going to Ukraine to volunteer for cleanup projects. It would be nice to have somebody organize these efforts. Hint, hint, I'm not alone.
Well, I thank you for the support, Sweaty Chungus, and also the suggestion. However, that would be a massive undertaking for me alone to do. I would most likely have to hire multiple people to do that, and then at that point, it would become my full-time job, and I would have to go and shelve pretty much everything that's in my future to try and do that. So it's a good idea. I think there's probably a lot of organizations out there that are already working in that direction, and if there are, I'm going to give them all of the support on this channel and tell y'all to go that way. So with that, I hope that does address the comment, and thank you so much once again for the support. Also, Matthew, is it just me or is it burning hot down here?
It is a little toasty. I think the AC might be having an issue.
Oh boy, that's great. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from BSG Wolf, who weighed in on the poll earlier. He said, it's white phosphorus from an airburst artillery round. I'm an ex-artilleryman.
And I thank you for the support, and I thank you for clarifying what we largely assumed at the time. There are some people who come through here who swear up and down the Russians don't use white phosphorus, they use thermite, but white phosphorus is the cheaper and more readily available of the two. And so I thank you for the support and also letting us know that, because we did know it was an airburst. That was one thing we did know for sure, but we did not know if it was a white phosphorus or thermite. And so thank you for clarifying that for us, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Try and Take Alaska, who says, I got a prepaid credit card for my hospital stay, and it works on YouTube, unlike military disability card, LOL. Thanks, guys, and Slava Ukraine. And also, I forgot to mention earlier, Try and Take Alaska made it through the heart surgery that he was having, and we are very glad to hear that as well, and it's good to know that you are recovering, and you're still watching the streams, even at that.
And also, I do have to say, it's crazy to me, some of y'all's dedication to the stream. Like, y'all can actually have, like, an amputation or something. Y'all be on the stream that night, hey, just got out of surgery, you got an amputation, watch the stream. And it's crazy to me sometimes, because y'all, a lot of y'all love this, like you Try and Take Alaska, like y'all just love this stream, and it means a lot to me, and that's also why I feel heavily dedicated to this, is that a lot of y'all enjoy this stream and count on it and are here thick and thin, and so y'all are also inspiration for me to make sure to keep this thing going nonstop on top of the promise. And so thank you so much for the support, Try and Take Alaska. I'm glad to hear that you made it through the surgery and that you are recovering right now, and also I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and real quick, let me get rid of one more troll. There we go, he's gone. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Simon Shorthouse, who says, Lieutenant General Andrei Sychivyov, or something like that, I'm mispronouncing it, obviously, General in Command, Russia's West Group, Sychivoy photo evidence, Rob Lee on Twitter, also looks like the guy at the protest.
Interesting. Well, I thank you for the support. I will try and look into that, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to or not. But that is an interesting suggestion, and that would be interesting to know if that guy's been in all of those places at the same time. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Big Owl. And Big Owl does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Big Owl, for the support. We appreciate you very much. And Enforcer, would you like to say anything about Big Owl's comment?
Yes, I would. I would like to thank you.
Or super chat, excuse me.
I was thinking, did he leave a comment? But I thank you so much for the support, Big Owl, because Big Owl is the mascot of one of the football teams here in Alabama, and that is where we're from. And that's where we live, actually. So I thank you so much for being an Alabamian. And with that, we are on to the next one. Praise hell. Oh, wait a minute. No, not that. Praise Dale, raise hell. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Jonathan Shabshikes, who says, thank you for your hard work and dedication, Enforcer. My family from Ukraine, some still in Kyiv. Clearly, Ukraine will take Kherson. What do they do after Crimea or South Coast?
I think they will most likely do the South Coast first, because that's almost a prerequisite in their march towards Crimea, so I think it'll most likely be the South Coast first. But without getting into too much detail about how exactly that will happen, I'll just leave it at that. So thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Genesic, who says, hello from Erfurt, Germany. Thank you for your streams, and have a coffee.
Erfurt, Germany. Erfurt, Germany. Let's go see where Erfurt is. Let me see if I can find it on the map. Erfurt. I feel like it's it. There it is. Yeah, it's in the middle of the country. I was right. I actually got German geography right for once. So let's go check out Erfurt. Okay, so it looks like privacy.
Wow, barely any of it.
Yeah, privacy laws in Germany are strict. So they don't allow Google Street Maps often. But it looks like they did on this one street. Oh, hallo. That's actually Swedish, but
this looks like a Lego playset.
Honestly, this looks like what you would think Germany would look like. And look, they got little tram tracks and everything. Isn't this nice? I like this. This is really a nice place. Usually, whenever you hear about Germany, you hear about like Dresden or Berlin, or like the post-war kind of like. I guess I got to be honest. I'm not really a big fan of post-war German cities like Berlin and Cologne. This is almost like a post-modernist architecture hellscape, and I'm not really a big fan of modern architecture. So it's really interesting to see a German town that looks like it survived largely intact, although you can tell some of the buildings are a little new. But I still like that they were, if they are new, they were made in the older German style. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and also letting us take a look at your hometown of Erfurt, Germany. And I would like to take a look inside that church. I don't know about you, Matthew, but that piqued my interest.
Yes, it did.
So let's see a picture of this thing. So this is the All Saints Church. Dang, that's elaborate. Let's see here. I'm assuming that this is probably a Catholic church, although I could be wrong. Could be a Protestant church. Oh, look. Wow, that's a nice tram. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That looks like something from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. No comment from Matthew. He's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna let him roam in his own stupidity there for a moment.
I can't even remember that movie.
Really?
I mean, I know what it is, but I can't remember like the actual like scenes in it.
Interesting. Well, I can't show it because of copyright. You know that, but
oh, definitely not. They'd come down here and bust our kneecaps twice.
That's true. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope you enjoyed us looking at your town of Erfurt, Germany. It's a nice place. I really like it. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 super chat from Dieter Herfurt, who says, I live in Australia, but I came from West Berlin, Germany, and I know the Russians there taken all the toilets from the buildings in Ost-Berlin.
Interesting. And also, that's cool to hear you're from West Berlin. That means that you're from your Cold War era. So with that, I thank you so much for the support and also letting us know that. And also, a fun fact about West Berlin, I'm sure you know it, but there was a prison here in Spandau that was incredibly famous for keeping a lot of German war criminals. And I think, if I remember correctly, it wasn't around the fort. I might be wrong. It may have been the fort, but it was somewhere around here, and they bulldozed the thing after the last guy died in it. I think it was Rudolf. No, it wasn't Rudolf Hess who died in it. I forgot who it was, but still, West Berlin's an interesting place. And also, cool fun fact for you, Matthew. Did you know you can actually still see the divide in between East and West Berlin at night?
Why just at night?
Because the East German power grid and the lights that it uses are different than the West German power grid and the lights they use. And so if I pull up Berlin at night from space, you'll actually see the distinct difference. Let me show you right here. It's so cool. You can see that the east side that was controlled by the Soviets has a more like a darker brown light color. And then you can see the side that was controlled by the West, West Berlin, has an entirely different electrical grid setup, and therefore the lights are a slightly different color.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. You can literally see each city block and which side controlled what. That's like one of the coolest things about Berlin from space at night, if you're ever in a SpaceX ship in the future. But with that, I hope that is an interesting little look into East and West Berlin. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, thank you for the good little joke there.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Luxor, who says, Australia stands with Ukraine. Hope we send more Bushmasters and M113AS4Ss. We have hundreds in storage.
And I hope we do as well. The United States has nothing but weapons to give, and a lot of them are kind of getting old at this point. And so I hope that we do send over some more of those weapons because, of course, anything and everything will help out the Ukrainians a great deal. And we can see that they're doing incredibly well with the Western weapons they have, and they're making a lot of progress. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And also, I like how the last bot you got rid of, Matthew, called us a drug dealer.
Yes.
I was sitting there thinking, I was like, how in the world does us reporting news equate to us dealing crack? I don't know how those two align with each other.
I thought he was a bot earlier, but I let him sit for a minute because typically they'll start out with something like mundane, and they'll say something like, this channel is good, and then later they'll show up and say something like, they're drug dealers.
We're sitting here reporting the news, and we're doing this every day. You know, our days are always filled with doing this in college, and then this guy's gonna sit there, he's dealing crack. It's like, where in the world do you even get that? Like, that's just,
You know, it's funny, that's what they say, the Russians say about Ukraine, is it's full of drug dealers.
Yeah, you know, and I know you haven't gotten these emails, Matthew, but I always get the occasional email from some lunatic that writes up a 5-page essay about how I work for George Soros specifically, and the CIA, and I'm a Western operative or something. There's a lot of crazy people out there, and also, just to let y'all know, due to my experience with these crazy people and how they just come up with stuff out of thin air on me, I don't believe any conspiracy theories anymore. Like, you could tell me a conspiracy theory these days about a specific person somewhere, I will most likely not believe it, regardless of who they are, because there's been so many conspiracy theories that people have tried to stick to me that aren't even true. And you just look at them, you're like, wow, what an idiot. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Smiley Face, who says, shout out to Stoffel, Slava Ukraine. And I'm sure Stoffel does appreciate the shout out.
And I think
shout out.
And I thank you for the support, and we will make sure that Stoffel gets that shout out. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from VPCZX, who says, my family in Kazakhstan said there was a standoff at the border today.
Interesting. I didn't know that. And also, Matthew, please, it's driving me crazy. It's Kazakhstan. You're getting Afghanistan and Kazakhstan mixed up. You're calling it Kazakhstan. But
Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Kazakhstan. Yes, and then but the rest of them, what you'd be right on, like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, all of them follow that kind of logic that you're doing, except for Kazakhstan. That's the exception, and it is quite a tongue twister, but once you get it, it's like, it's gold for good. But anyways, moving on to the answer to the comment, that's interesting to hear that there was a standoff at the border today. Hopefully it'll be like a standoff in between the Indians and the Chinese in the Kashmir region, where they just start socking each other in the mouths, and it doesn't go beyond that, because usually that kind of stuff can be resolved, because the worst thing that happens is people get bruised. So with that, I thank you for the support, and also letting us know a little bit about what's going on there, and we may try and report on that here and there, and the tensions that start rising in between the two. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we were able to address that fairly well.
And up next, we just have a mirror. Let's see here. Looks like we have 4 more super chats to go until we get to our live chat questions, so we're somewhat on time tonight. We have a $3 super chat from Rodrigo da Silva, who says, Russians just happen to learn it's not a good idea to mess with women. They can be incredibly annoying creatures when they want to, LMAO. All right.
What? Can you reread that again?
You want me to reread that again?
I actually didn't really pick up on it until halfway through when I heard him say women are annoying creatures. I didn't really get anything before or after that to even know what it was saying.
All right, so here we go again. And also, good night, BC. I saw you're getting off the night. We'll see you next time.
Good night, BC.
And Rodrigo said, Russians just happen to learn it's not a good idea to mess with the women. They can be incredibly annoying creatures when they want to. LMAO.
Oh, well, I thank you for the support, but I haven't found I haven't found a lot of women to be incredibly annoying. Except for a small few, but then again, that's just people. You know, you're going to run into annoying people regardless. But I thank you for the support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Anton Rakubisky, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support of the channel. We also have a $2 super chat from IVDV, who says, this is start of the end. Agree?
I would agree. This is the start of the end, I believe, and I think the Russians will never be able to properly rebound and actually regain the initiative. They may be able to do it for a little bit, or they may be able to waffle it for a bit. Well, I guess you could say fumble it for a bit, but it'll go right back into Ukraine's favor and remain this way through duration. And so with that, I hope that answers the comment, and thank you so much for the support. And with that, I think we're on to the final super chat of the night.
And this is the final super chat of the night until we get to our live chat questions. So this is a $2 super chat from Chris Webb, who says Pizza Fund, and thanks for the good news.
And thank you so much for the support to the Pizza Fund, and thank you so much for enjoying the news as well. We try our best to report exactly what's going on, and today we were able to have a title that was over the top because the news we got was unbelievably over the top. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to answer live chat questions probably for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll be getting off. Or maybe a little bit shorter. I don't know. It depends. But with that, we're on to the live chats.
And up first, we have a question from 420 Conservative, who says, Enforcer, did you see some Russian officials are trying to overthrow Putin and charge him with treason? And I can tell you what, those people aren't going to last long.
I have not heard about that either. I don't think they'd last long, but I do applaud them for their efforts if that is happening. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Gunturn 2009, who says, once Ukraine claims back all the land, do you think they will do some offensive attack on mainland Russia or even Belarus for their hand in this?
I think the Ukrainians would most likely keep it contained amongst them and the Russians, because if they do anything against Belarus, considering they've done nothing, then it looks like Ukraine's taking offensive action entirely on their own. So I think it will remain in between them and the Russians. However, I don't think they'll be pushing deep into Russian territory, and if they do, it'll probably only be a mile or two's worth of an incursion, because that would be a massive undertaking that they would have to do to start fighting on Russian territory. And I don't think they'd be willing to do that. I think they just want to retake their land and then end the war. And at that point, I think the Russians may be willing to end the war because it would never be going in their advantage beyond that. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question away. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Ricky Golfer, who says, as Ukraine continues to liberate more towns, will we start to hear about more horror stories, such as what happened in Bucha? Hopefully not.
Certainly. I think we will. It's not going to be in every town, but it will be in some. In fact, it may be in every town. I'm not entirely sure, but the fact that the Russians control so many areas and they fought so heavily in some of them, like Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, there has got to be atrocities that are occurring behind the front lines in many places that we don't know of yet because the Ukrainians haven't liberated them. And so with that, I hope that does address the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving right along, we have a question from Uncle Zeph, who says, does the Enforcer believe Ukraine will be able to hold on to their gains until next spring?
Oh, certainly. I mean, at this point, with them covering 40 miles of ground in 2 days, they're facing no resistance in that area. There's no question they will certainly hold on to all the ground they've taken until spring. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and we are on to the next one. Also, real quick to say something else to mention this. During the winter months, while offensives and such things can continue, largely wars kind of start to subside a little bit during the colder months because it's just more difficult to do things. And so if they have these holdings going into the late fall and getting into early winter, they will most likely have them going into spring. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Ed's 3D Tech, who says, did a Russian general get captured today by Ukrainian army?
I did not see a video showing that, but it may have happened. It's just that we weren't able to report on it. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. It's kind of a vague answer, but I'm not entirely sure if it did or didn't happen. I didn't see it, but it could have happened. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Commander COVID, who says, could Kherson be a feint to draw Russia's attention away from the Kharkiv front?
It could be. We've actually had this question a lot tonight. It's a great one. It could be, but I also think that the Ukrainians may be trying to knock out two birds in one stone and have a decent amount of the Russian army trapped in one area where they can just wipe them out or force them into surrendering and then exploit the weak spots that were left behind across the rest of the front line. That may be the case. And so with that, I hope that answers the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Happy Dragon, who says, let's see, do you know how many supply routes the Ukrainians have taken control of?
Unfortunately, I cannot get an exact number because we don't know how the Russian supply routes were organized. However, them taking the M03, the P07, and also the P78, and from what we know, the bridge crossing on the P79, they have knocked out probably around 3 supply lines that were heading in the Izyum direction or around the rest of the Kharkiv area. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question in a way, but once again, take it with a grain of salt because we're not entirely sure if that's accurate or not. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Candy Nose, who says, is this the Tet offensive moment for the Russian public? They've been told it's almost over and Ukraine is on the ropes. Will this cause the Russian public to break support?
I don't think it will, and I think the Russians still have a lot of leeway to lie. They could just not report on what's going on in this area and focus elsewhere where they're just holding the line and make it look like, oh, you know, the Ukrainians, they're just holding us and we have all the power over them. Because you've got to remember, while a lot does kind of get out to the Russian public eventually, we haven't seen the mass pandemonium I was expecting from the attacks in Crimea in Russia yet. And also, whenever things do go poorly for Russia inside of Ukraine, they usually are able to gloss it over with a nice little lie and apparently keep the public completely unaware of what's really going on. So I don't think it will be a Tet offensive moment or a Pentagon paper moment for the Russians. I think this is just going to be something that the government looks at and goes, oh my God, we're going to have to tell them eventually, but it's not going to be today. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope that addresses the comment, at least in my opinion.
And up next, we have a question from Aquarius Builder, who says, did you see the huge platoon of marching Ukraine soldiers on Task and Purpose video yesterday? It was a short video. They are going to demolish Russia, and quick.
I didn't see it. Unfortunately, I don't watch a lot of other channels, but I think I know the video you're talking about, and also it was really cool. And there was a lot of Ukrainians on that road, and it was a really cool video. And so with that, I hope that does address the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Anonymous User, who says, huge news. The guy from last night and his rank, turns out we were all wrong. It's reported he's actually Lieutenant General Andre, and that last name I can't pronounce, highest ranking RF officer captured since World War II.
Can you type in his last name in the live chat so I can pull it up real quick?
Yes, and it should be in there right now.
Let's see. I'll just put that whole thing in there. Let's see here. Copy. Now let's paste that here, and then we got to add that I. Now let's pull that up. Oh, Boppy, it is! That's the guy. Wait a minute, this guy's got some hair, though. Let's go back and look at that video real quick. Oh, dang it, it's a new week. It's on an old map.
I don't know if that's the same guy.
I
mean, it could be. Wait a minute, there's the picture of him right there. The third one in.
This one? Oh, wait a minute, there it is. That's him.
Okay, that is the guy.
Oh my God! That is even worse. That is the funny.
What a joke.
What a joke. A lieutenant general getting captured alive. Jeez. That's just... Oh, man. I thank you so much for the support. Oh, not the support. Thank you so much for letting us know that information because I didn't know that. And this has got to be the funniest thing that's happened so far this war. And so with that, I hope that addresses the comment and thank you for letting us know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And he is that guy, pal. He is.
You're that guy, pal. You're that guy.
Yes, he is. And it looks like this is going to be our last one of the night. And it goes to John Gibson, who says, do you think that soldier on the phone could be booking a restaurant for his men in Severodonetsk? Who knows?
Yeah, I think he could. That's certainly a possibility. He's probably calling up a nice little restaurant in Severodonetsk and like, hey, do you have a table for 4? Thank you. Yes, we would like to pre-order our meals. We'll be there in about a week. But with that, that's a pretty good joke. I like that one, and also that's a great way to end this stream. Is that's the last question of the night. And of course, I thank every single one of y'all so much for watching. And if y'all have enjoyed the stream and y'all are new here and have not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button, as it will notify you when these streams go live, which is every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where we report the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. It was an absolute pleasure for me to talk to 10.1 thousand of y'all tonight on the news of the incredible events that have been ongoing in the war in Ukraine, and of course to talk about some of the unfortunate events that happened today with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. With that, I thank you all so much once again for tuning in for another night of news, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to report on day 199 of the war, the eve before day 200 of the war in Ukraine. Thank you all so much once again for watching, and I'll see you all then.